The story begins with the story of the protagonist, Rita, about a prophecy received at the moment of birth of every noble of the Spesian species, telling her not to allow desires to blind her. She considered it merely a superstition, so she lived her life without repressing her desires. However, the girl's life soon changed first. She was betrayed by a very close and beloved person, and after that, Rita lost her daughter, whom she loved the most. The girl talks about the second Prince George, the man in whom the heroine still trusted, who was, according to her words, the saddest man in the bright world because of his mother's origin, and the nobility's mockery about it. George shares with the main character that he has no one but her. Rita remembers that she also suffered abuse at home for being the illegitimate daughter of Count Cardinal. The main character takes pity on and hugs Prince George, and promises that she will definitely be on his side, no matter what happens. Rita remembers that they called her the Witch of Cardinal, and that society disrespected her. The girl says she agreed to marry the Archduke, whom she did not love, to make George emperor. Rita's husband, the king of the Northern Desert, Grand Duke of Katen, chosen by her father. He was the first prince of the Spesian Empire, abandoned by the crown prince. For George, the girl became Archduchess of Katen. She considered her relationship with the Grand Duke of Katen a waste of time. After her political marriage to the Archduke, Rita helped George overthrow Prince Charles, the emperor's favorite successor to the throne, and installed George as emperor. However, news soon appeared that the emperor had married another woman, making her empress, not the main character. Upon learning this, Rita was tormented by a feeling of betrayal. Her husband, Joseph, was very worried about the girl. Rita asks him for support and comfort. The girl remembers that it was a marriage of convenience that she never wanted. Soon the heroine gave birth to her beloved daughter, Ivonne. At first, the young mother was careful with the child. However, later, Rita believed that it was her daughter who taught her true love. The girl states that she does not want George to be sad. She did not want to see his sad face, and upon seeing his smile, Rita did not rejoice, as if she had the whole world. However, Yvonne's smile brought her happiness. The main character's daughter grew up quickly, and her mother was very happy, and she said that her daughter changed her life. Rita is sure that the feelings she experienced before were not love, unlike those she felt next to Yvonne. Yvonne was very happy with her beloved daughter. She considered it true love. However, this happiness did not last long, and Rita senses danger for her child. The heroine calms and hides her daughter. Rita hears strange voices, worries, but tries to convince Yvonne that everything happening is a game of hide-and-seek. The lady is found by some men, and the main character is genuinely surprised, and does not understand why George's people, including His Majesty's Knight, Sir Robert, came to her looking for her daughter. Rita is indignant and threatens them, saying that her husband is an archduke. However, Robert does not seem surprised and mockingly asks about the heroine's current surname. If Robert says that the archduke found out about the conspiracy between Rita and George, and found proof of her treason, Rita is surprised and Robert offers to give her his son and ensure they don't touch the lady. The girl does not believe what is happening. She does not understand how it could have happened that Joseph betrayed her, since she can no longer claim the throne. At the same time, George's men search for a secret door and the heroine panics. Suddenly, Rita remembers telling George about the secret passage of Katana Castle in a letter. Unexpectedly, the heroine shouts confidently and draws the attention of uninvited guests. Robert and his soldiers head towards her and discover why Rita is called a witch, and they encourage her to use magic. As the girl mentioned earlier, she hated being called a witch, so she rarely used magic. However, now, overwhelmed by emotion, she shouts a spell against the strangers. However, nothing happens after this and Rita is surprised. At the same time, some uninvited guests find Yvonne, the girl's daughter. Robert takes the girl with him. Rita is angry. She again threatens the soldiers who are leaving with her husband, who will definitely punish them. However, the girl's burst of anger quickly passes, and she, completely exhausted, begs Robert to give Yvonne back to her. Robert exhales and asks the girl if she already knows the news. He tells Rita that His Majesty abandoned her. The girl is shocked and does not believe him. When Sir Robert leaves, he tells the lady that her husband Joseph is dead. Rita does not believe his words. She is desperate and absolutely confused. Robert and his soldiers take Yvonne away and tell her that bringing the girl and her mother to the palace was an order from the emperor. After some time, George and Rita meet at the palace, and the emperor notices that the girl has lost weight. She remains silent and he continues to convince her that he still cannot afford much. And he also adds that the prophecy about Ivonne has come true. The confused girl asks what prophecy they are talking about. George explains that he announced the arrival of a half-king from the north. Thus, Ivonne, although a girl, was a princess of mixed blood between the empire and Joseph, which is why the emperor could not conquer the entire territory of the empire. George explains how he planned to eliminate Joseph and Charles. Suddenly, the emperor touches Rita's face and tells her that this time to give him a son, more beautiful than Ivonne. The girl sharply and aggressively pushes the man's hand away. Angry and distressed, she screams at him to leave and not touch her. After a while, we see Rita on the shore of a reservoir, saying goodbye to her family, and we learn that His Majesty sent her a patrol. The girl's butler, an older man, tells her to leave here and she agrees, planning to finally let Ivonne and Joseph go. Rita wanted to stay a little longer, remembering that she returned home for the sake of her family. But the butler convinces her that there is no time and she needs to leave by the path her husband took during his life, which makes Rita surprised. The butler reveals that it was His Majesty's order to bring the young lady. Since the Archduke rejected the Emperor's proposal, he prepared for such an outcome and planned future actions. Rita, shocked by the information she heard, stares at the butler in shock. The old man explains to the girl that if His Majesty receives the princess, he promised not to touch Katen. Hearing all this, the lady realizes with horror that her husband was willing to sacrifice Katen to protect Ivonne. The butler notes with regret that Joseph loved the girl very much. Rita is surprised by this statement. She begins to recall her deceased husband and describes him as a cold man and indifferent who turns out to have loved Ivonne very much. After thinking about everything she heard, Rita cannot stand it and starts to cry. Under the influence of suppressed emotions, the young widow mentally apologizes to Joseph, remembering that he was overthrown, although he was once supposed to become the heir to the throne. Rita realizes with annoyance that she was willing to get rid of her younger brother from the imperial family, just to put the middle one on the throne. The girl wonders if she could have been happy with him, because she never wanted to be his wife. However, despite this, she understands he turned out to be a good husband. The young widow remembers that, although cold and rude, he never blamed or insulted his wife. Rita tells herself that this is exactly what she liked about him: his silence, his bright eyes. The girl understands that Joseph did not approve of either her or George, but for the sake of little Ivonne. And Rita, he was preparing the way for retreat. The young woman gets up and asks the butler for forgiveness, asking if she has been a bad mistress. To this, the older man replies negatively and tells the girl not to worry. The girl gently touches the butler's shoulder and tells him she will take care of everything and put an end to what is happening. The old man reacts with surprise to her words, and for the first few seconds cannot find words to react. Rita declares that she will not allow George to trample on Katen. The girl confidently walks away from the butler, despite his questions toward the door. Rita meets a horseman from the Emperor's army, who orders her to move out of the way if she wants to stay alive. The horseman says that according to the order, only Rita must be delivered alive to the Emperor's castle. Rita calmly reacts to his words and asks if he knows why she should be left alive. The girl reacts confidently to the horseman's comment about addressing the Emperor politely, and also gives him a warning. Looking angrily at her opponents, she warns them not to cross the nearby line. However, no one takes her statement seriously. The horseman at the head of the Emperor's army confidently directs his horse towards Rita. The girl watches this action with a smile, recalling her warning. Rita creates a trap and the opponents realize it, become cautious and retreat. She laughs cheerfully, reminding them that alchemy is not magic. However, at the same moment, the girl understands that everything must be paid for, and for her this is the price of health. Since after casting the spell, the girl started bleeding. However, Rita is satisfied with this. She declares that she will not allow anyone to denigrate Katen. At the same time, she starts feeling unwell and loses consciousness. Suddenly, the girl wakes up, but at first she doesn't understand where she is. At the same moment, Rita is abruptly grabbed by the hair and realizes it is her father, shouting at her for embarrassing him in front of the Empress. The girl reacts surprised to what is happening. She is surprised how her father ended up in Katana, but most importantly, she is still alive. The girl reflects on what happened and realizes that since she is still alive, the magic circle failed. Rita's father is obviously angry and cross. He doesn't stop and demands an explanation. a justification for why the girl told the Empress she never wanted to marry the Duke of Katen. The girl cannot find the right words because she does not understand at all what he means. The man gets even angrier and declares that Rita should have sided with George, and that, being an illegitimate daughter, she had no right to dream of becoming Empress. The father tells the girl to stop the nonsense and prepare for her wedding to the Duke of Katen. Suddenly, Rita realizes how young her face is. The girl remembers that she gave birth to a daughter a year after marrying, and Ivonne died at the age of 6. And the heroine got married exactly 7 years ago. Thinking about all this, Rita does not understand what really happened to her. At that moment, a familiar voice calls the girl and asks if she is well. Rita asks the girl who came up, Sabrina, why she is there. The main character mentions that Sabrina is a personal maid who spent her entire childhood with Rita. Rita is perplexed because Sabrina is having an affair with George, who betrayed the girl. However, due to her status, Sabrina cannot be with her lover, so she was abandoned and humiliated. Rita still doesn't understand what is happening to her, and Sabrina reminds the girl that Prince George will soon come to the meeting. The maid tells Rita that she will help her get ready. For her part, the protagonist decides that everything happening is a dream, so she jokingly says that the only thing missing is her father. However, at that very moment, the girl is filled with anger. She realizes that she will see George even in dreams, but it would be better if she dreamed of her beloved daughter. Rita tells the maid that there is no need to help her now because she wants to rest. Sabrina is happy and asks to relay this news to the prince. Rita looks silently at the maid and thinks about how happy she must be with George alone. Sabrina helps Rita get to her bedroom. In the bedroom, the main character reflects on how George whispers words of love to her while giving false hope to Sabrina. Rita dismisses her maid. The girl lies alone in bed. She starts to cry and hopes to wake up soon from her dream. Rita expects to see her daughter, but suddenly finds herself in a different place. The girl finds herself in the place where she last drew the alchemical formula. That is, in the underground room of Katana. Unexpectedly, Rita notices something unusual in the alchemical formula. She stands next to the formula and sees that it has changed. Rita is bewildered. She has never seen this formula, which means someone changed it. However, none of Katana's alchemists understand what form. The girl understands that the formula is the language of an alchemist and suddenly sees the answer in the written formula. Rita sees that the new formula tells how to protect and save Katen. The girl touches the formula and realizes that if she understands everything correctly, she will be able to save her daughter. However, the formula does not last forever and slowly begins to disappear. Without having time to do anything, Rita suddenly wakes up in the bedroom where Sabrina was accompanying her. The girl thinks about what she saw in her dream. She understands that she didn't fully remember the formula, but now she is sure that there is a way to protect Katen that is in that very formula. Rita knows that with her life as collateral, alchemy has turned back time. A young maid approaches the heroine and asks if she has been called. Rita continues to analyze what is happening and realizes that she has returned to her past. And although she has no explanation for what happened, the girl knows one thing for sure. She has a chance to change the future. To do this, the heroine needs to know what is happening, so she asks the maid where Prince George is. The maid informs Rita and tells her that he was in the room, and Sabrina went to tell him that Rita was sick. The girl listens to the young assistant and tells her she feels much better, which is why she wants to see the prince, which surprises the maid. Rita gets dressed for her meeting with George. The heroine tells the maid that she just twisted her ankle and asks for help. The maid agrees to help the lady. The maid and Rita go downstairs together and stop in front of the door. However, the maid seems worried and nervous. She stops Rita and tells the heroine not to enter. The young maiden starts making excuses, saying that the count wanted to tell Rita something. Rita sees the young woman's confusion and distress, understands what is happening behind the door, and is surprised that the maid is worried. Rita asks the girl her name and finds out that the maid's name is Rona. The girl remembers that in her life there were already servants like Rona, caring and understanding. But Rita pushed them aside, not believing in their sincerity. However, Rita thanks Rona and prepares to enter. Rona tries to stop the hostess, but the heroine already enters the room. There Sabrina, not noticing the appearance of a stranger, flatters the prince and tells him how much she misses him. The prince tells the maiden the same thing. The couple hugs and still doesn't realize that Rita decides to draw their attention. The prince turns around upon hearing the sound at the door irritably noting that he asked not to let anyone in. However, at that moment he sees Rita and starts to get nervous. The main character calmly stays at the door, listening to the prince explain that he was informed about Rita's poor health. Rita quietly approaches the couple, desperately not understanding how he could do this to her, and she is not going to watch them in silence. Rita greets the man as if nothing happened. Some time later, Rita sits alone with George, where he tells her that he didn't expect to see the girl due to her illness. The heroine pretends to say that she ran to him, fearing that George had waited too long. Deep down, Rita hates George for his excessive self-confidence. At the same moment, George starts making excuses for what happened, saying that Sabrina is just a toy to him. The man approaches Rita and tells her that this is a necessary practice to communicate better with women. Unexpectedly, George reminds Rita that she and the Count agreed to help him. Rita, irritated, pulls the man's hand away and asks what kind of help he is talking about. George reminds her of her task to prepare a camouflage potion. Rita remembers that she needed the potion to ruin Charles' reputation. Rita remembers that after using the potion, George took the form of Charles and seduced his cousin, the Duchess and her youngest daughter, and even the nuns at the convent for playing dirty games. George's plan worked, and the angry nobles turned their backs on the crown prince. Rethinking the situation, Rita understands that George's action is dirty and wrong. At that moment, George puts his arm around the girl's shoulders and tries to pull her towards him. However, Rita does not allow him to do this. She holds out her hands and does not let him come near her. George does not understand what happened and why she is acting this way, suggesting it is jealousy over other women. Rita gets angry, even thinking for a second about killing the man, but remembers that George is a paladin. Blessed by the Pope at birth, the girl knows that this is why it is not easy to kill a paladin, as they heal immediately. So everyone loves and respects him. The heroine remembers that they despise her for using magic. Rita recovers and tries to behave naturally so as not to arouse suspicion. George tells Rita with complete naturalness that she is the complete opposite of the vulgar Sabrina. The man says that he cannot take the throne if he stays put, because Charles is the Empress's son. George touches Rita and reminds her that he only trusts her. The girl is surprised by the man's words, but internally sincerely hopes that he receives the entirety of her sins. George lights a cigarette and notices that Rita is indifferent today and wonders why. The heroine understands that she needs to behave naturally, so she pretends, and asks him with a smile why he thinks so. George says he thought Rita was angry with him because of Sabrina, but the girl convinces him that this is not the case, and he believes her. Rita realizes that she should act surprised. Suddenly, George asks if Rita knew about his relationship with Sabrina, but the girl replies negatively, and asks him about his relationship with Count Cardinale. The man tells how he came to see Rita, and found out that she was going to marry Prince Katana. Rita laughs and pretends to be, planning to leave him as soon as possible to put her thoughts in order. George pats Rita's head and says that the Count can be harsh sometimes, but he is not a bad person. The heroine feels uncomfortable with these words because her father abused her. George declares that he does not want to force the girl to marry, but this will greatly help him conquer the throne. And in the future, he promises to make Rita the Empress. Rita notices that he always uses sweet words to seduce her, who has been expelled from aristocratic society. Now that she knows how everything will turn out, Rita says she will do what she has to do. George seems surprised, not expecting an affirmative answer from the girl. Rita smiles and confirms it, saying she will definitely be invited to the Emperor's palace, because it is much better than the Count's house. George is happy and thanks the girl. The man bids farewell to Rita with a kiss, and promises to visit her before she leaves for Katen. After a while, Rita calls Rona. The maid approaches Rita. The girl tells Rona to bring her aromatic oils, a disinfectant solution from the laboratory, and prepare a bath for her. It turns out Rita wants to wash everything George touched. At the same time, she reflects on the formula she saw and thinks about what the phrase means about a girl who is willing to see the truth with her eyes. Rita supposes they are talking about the eyes described in the legends of alchemy. However, before thinking about it seriously, she decided to rest and relax, because now she knows what time she is in. The girl trusts that this time she will be able to save the loved one she lost. Sometime later, at Rita's house, the young maids, urged by the eldest one, wonder why the heroine is suddenly marrying the Prince of Katana. At this moment, Rita is preparing to move and pack her things. She understands she shouldn't rush the marriage, but she really doesn't want to cross paths with George again. A maid approaches the girl and asks which boutique she plans to order a dress from. Rita remembers ordering an expensive dress from the famous designer Madame Sti, responsible for the imperial family's outfits. The girl considered her marriage to Joseph terrible. She wanted her wedding to be more luxurious than anyone else's. As a result, the heroine decides to order a dress from an unknown boutique to be as modest as possible. The maid Rona is genuinely surprised by this decision, because this wedding is an important event in the heroine's life. However, Rita does not plan to invite anyone. The main character's thoughts are occupied with Katen, whom she sincerely loves, so she wants to celebrate the wedding quietly and prepare for revenge. Furthermore, Rita and Joseph's marriage was celebrated with the aim of pressuring Carlo, so there's no point in postponing the wedding for long. Rona pulls the heroine out of her thoughts and reminds her that from now on, she does not need to obey His Highness's will, because Rita is his fiancée. The girl takes the maid by the shoulders and asks what happened. Rita believes it has to do with her father, Rosco Cardinale, a terrible man who forces girls. Rona looks at the hostess fearfully and denies Rita's assumption. Once calm, Rita asks if Rona would like to go with her to Katen, which surprises the young woman, because she is not Rita's personal maid. At that moment, a surprised Sabrina appears. Young Rona and Rita look at her confusedly. Sabrina cannot believe that Rita is going to leave her. Rita looks at her ex-assistant disappointed and reproaches her for eavesdropping. Sabrina doesn't understand what's happening and what's going on. However, the maid quickly falls to her knees and begs forgiveness from the mistress, saying that she didn't know George was Rita's lover and assures the main character that the man forced her and that she could do nothing about it. However, Rita does not believe her words because, even though George is a scoundrel, he won't force anyone. Sabrina, overwhelmed by emotion, warns Rita that if she is not accepted in Katen, everyone will find out that the girl is an illegitimate daughter. Rita remembers that to avoid being the center of a scandal, the Count was a cleric and raised his wife's illegitimate daughter as his own. Sabrina used to use this information for her own benefit, but now Rita was indifferent. Sabrina got angry seeing that the girl didn't care. However, the maid swears to her mistress that she will never look at Prince George. Rita wonders, she used to think that George came here to see her. However, maybe it was for Sabrina that he went to Katen. So, if Rita wants to stop George's plan, she has to take Sabrina with her. So she agrees and allows Sabrina to go with her. The maid is happy and doesn't believe Rita will agree. However, the heroine does not like Sabrina, so she forbids her from touching her. The time has come and Rita heads to Katen, the land abandoned by God. However, Joseph managed to turn it into a habitable city. Rita is surprised that a prince abandoned in this place can become an archduke. Suddenly, something starts happening on the way. The girls in the carriage realize that there is a monster outside. Rita remembers that the monster already appeared in the past, so she doesn't panic too much. So she calms her maids, because she understands that Joseph must appear as before. The heroine says that in Spezian, there are two types of sword masters capable of fighting monsters: paladins and demon hunters, who have different auras. Joseph, Rita's future husband, is a demon hunter with a dark aura. Knowing this, the girl becomes completely calm and relaxed. It turns out that Joseph selected brave demon hunters from the capital to defend Katen. After George becomes emperor, more people will move to Katen. Now Rita will defend Katen alongside Joseph without hiding her skills. Ron pulls the girl out of her thoughts and informs her about her rescue by the knights. The girls are happy to have been saved, and young Rona says it's the first time she has seen such knights. The girls see the Archduke himself alongside the knights, and Rita is surprised. Because the last time he did not come in person, Rona is happy, takes the main character into her arms, and says that Joseph is a good person. Rita smiles warmly and agrees with these words. Joseph, the forgotten crown prince and king of the deserted castle, the man who could never smile warmly. Rita's husband. Sometime later, Rona helps Rita clean up and asks why little is known about Joseph in social circles. Rita asks the maid if she knows anything about the former crown prince, and she replies that he died due to an illness. The main character accepts and begins to recall the story. In fact, Joseph belongs to the royal family of Lasvecchia, but his relatives wanted to hide the fact that he was a demon hunter. Therefore, they sent him to the cold north, where only monsters abound. Most likely, the family was waiting for his death, but nobody expected Katen to prosper. As Joseph grew up, he began to avoid crowded places. The only people who knew he was the older brother of the current crown prince were the temple and the imperial family. Despite his beauty and achievements, there were no marriage proposals. His nickname and always cold expression also influenced. However, Rita understands that he was not so cruel because he once did everything possible to protect her. While the girl thinks about this, Joseph approaches her and greets her. Rita notices how young the man looks and remembers that she got married at 20. When Joseph was 24, the girl pretends she is meeting the Archduke for the first time, although this is not the first encounter. Suddenly, Rita suspects that the man came to her debut. But this is not surprising because many people go to the imperial palace. And come, Joseph also introduces himself to the main character and kisses her hand. After this, the man bids farewell to Rita and promises to meet her at the castle. The girl's crew continues on their way, and the girl touches the hand the Archduke kissed. Sometime later, already at the castle, the butler approaches Rita to ask if she would mind renting the cathedral, since His Highnesses means allow it. The girl considers it, because her father and George worked hard for this marriage to symbolize the connection between the Holy Society and the imperial family. Rita remembers her conversation with George, who believed that the decision to marry in the cathedral belonged to Joseph. However, the girl admits it was her decision, to which she receives a reproach from George. Despite not liking the attention, the Archduke accepted the request to use the cathedral as the wedding hall. Rita thought George was jealous of her, but his reaction was most likely due to his wounded pride. The girl gives instructions about the appropriate hall for the wedding. She smiles and tells Dante, the butler, not to worry. However, the man wonders how the girl knows his name. Rita feels a little embarrassed, realizing that she is no longer the same girl she was 7 years ago. Dante was the Duke's butler, whom she saw almost every day so naturally. He knows a lot about him. Rita pretends and tells the man that she needed to find out the name of her future butler. It is understandable that the man agrees with the girl and asks no unnecessary questions. When Dante leaves, Rona tells Rita about the wedding dress and says she was going to order a dress from Madame Elba's salon. Since Madame Est's dresses are much more famous, Rona dusts Rita's face and emphasizes that the mistress's current dress looks simple, but she has excellent taste. Looking at herself, Rita thinks that the image turned out even better than she expected. Rona is happy for the main character and asks Sabrina what she thinks of Rita. Sabrina timidly agrees with Rona and says that the lady is very beautiful and therefore known in high circles. Rona reproaches Sabrina that her expression is not appropriate and that the maids are having a misunderstanding among themselves. Rona continues to bother the dissatisfied Sabrina, pointing out that the mistress is dazzlingly beautiful and that her beauty can drive you crazy. In the end, the young maid says that Rita is 10 times more beautiful than Sabrina. The head maid reluctantly accepts this, and Rita admires and is proud of Rona and her behavior. Dante approaches the girls again and asks if the lady is ready to accompany him to the hall for the ceremony. Walking to the altar, Rita understands that this is her last chance and that she cannot make mistakes or wrong decisions. Rita remembers that in her past life, she never cared about this. The girl turns to her past self and asks what she is thinking about now, marrying by force a man she doesn't love. The priest conducting the ceremony pulls Rita out of her thoughts and asks the newlyweds to take turns swearing the required oath. Rita also takes the required oath and promises herself that she will make Joseph happy. After the vow, the girl expects a kiss on the cheek, according to tradition. However, Joseph asks Rita for permission to kiss her on the lips. After a while, the girl relaxes in the bath and thinks about everything that happened. Rita is considering how to clean the land of Katen using alchemy, since the place is still empty and arid. These thoughts are replaced by the girl's memory of her husband's kiss. Rita reproaches herself for thinking about the wrong things and tries to think about alchemy. When suddenly someone knocks on the door, Rona looks at her and asks if Madame is tired. Rita feels embarrassed, and the young maid reminds her that she is no longer Lady Cardinal, but Archduchess Katana. Rita understands that she will protect what she loves, and first of all, she needs to help Prince Carlo ascend the throne. After all, if George ascends the throne, he will not be able to save his daughter Ivonne, because it is unknown if alchemy influenced the prophecy about the girl. That says she will become a half-queen. While taking important notes, Rita thinks about her daughter and wonders if they will meet again. The heroine remembers that on the day of the founding of Laurentia, a special holiday, George ascended the throne, and on that day, Saint Evelina was declared empress. The girl tells herself that she will not allow her daughter to die a second time. That is why Rita decides that on Yvonne's birthday she is obliged to save the heir. The third prince, who is undoubtedly ousted by George, the girl also plans to increase Katen's power and strengthen it, despite the fact that it is very far away. Furthermore, Katen is the only territory capable of helping Carlo, the heir to the throne. Rita is thinking about how to improve the fertility of the land, even if the region is in a difficult location. Moreover, the girl understands that she needs to develop her skills independently to be able to withstand dangers. The heroine realizes that she is willing to do anything to reunite with her daughter. Rita promises herself that this time she will not make mistakes and will not lose Ivonne. The girl writes enthusiastically, analyzing all the events that occurred and planning how to prepare for them when suddenly someone calls her. Rita gets distracted for a second, thinking it's Rona. However, her husband Joseph is standing in the doorway. Rita gets up and asks what brought him here, to which Joseph replies that the girl is now his wife and is not used to Katen. The heroine begins to suspect where this is going and starts to feel embarrassed. Emotionally, she asks him to wait to fulfill her marital duty. However, it seems Joseph didn't come for this. The man wanted to tell her that the girl could contact him if she needed anything, which Rita reproaches herself for not listening to until the end. The girl becomes embarrassed and repeats his words, to which he points out Rita's shame. Rita feels even more embarrassed and doesn't understand how she can be so naive. Joseph pulls the girl out of her thoughts and tells her that he will not force her to have a relationship she doesn't want. The girl remembers that in the past, he always tried to be courteous to her. Joseph tells his wife that she doesn't know him, to which she replies that she is good at judging people. The man responds to this with doubt. Rita changes the subject and says that her husband came to hear what she wants. Joseph agrees and waits for more words. The girl wonders if she can ask him for something because she owes him a lot. The girl tells him she doesn't need anything, but gives Joseph the documents she wrote earlier and offers to discuss their future together. The man takes the papers in his hands and begins to study them carefully. Rita remembers that her marriage is an agreement that was concluded to pressure Charles' position. Her husband studies the document, and the girl at that moment wonders if there are points he doesn't like. Joseph notices the privacy clause and asks Rita about it. The girl explains that if a man has another woman, she will not dare to be jealous of him, and vice versa. This clause exists because the marriage was not celebrated for love, but Rita silently promises to support her husband's love this time. It is understandable that Joseph agrees and says that Rita takes her position seriously if she assigns everyone's responsibilities so strictly. The girl promises that she will do everything possible for the prosperity of Katen. For example, her mastery of alchemy will help the lands of the region, which will help other areas. Joseph reads the document carefully, and Rita begins to worry a little. So she tells her husband that everything is written in detail on the back of the sheet, and asks him to contact her if something doesn't suit him. Joseph realizes that Rita's document looks more like a business plan, and the girl confirms it, saying that Katen has great development potential. Rita corrects herself and clarifies that she meant that the region has infinite possibilities, and hopes that Joseph was not offended by her words. The girl touches her husband's hand and says she understands the difficulties, because he doesn't know her well enough to trust Katen, and didn't want to marry her. Realizing this, she doesn't ask for Katen to be entrusted to her immediately. However, she asks Joseph not to suspect Rita without any reason, just because she is cardinal. The girl is glad that he understands this. Rita thanks him for his understanding and tells him it's late, to which the man asks if she wants to rest. The girl asks if Joseph is tired, to which he replies no, and that he will definitely read her conditions in the document. The man leaves, and Rita notices something on the table. On the table was a summer rose, a very rare flower that can be seen on cold days. The girl takes the flower and looks at it with admiration, supposing that Joseph brought it from the garden. Meanwhile, Joseph returned to his chambers, where Dante was waiting for him, not expecting to see him. The butler and his assistant notice that there are no signs of intimacy, and assume that the wife kicked her husband out on their wedding night. Dante and Manuel, the assistant, start arguing about Manuel's lack of tact, and the Archduke kicks them out. Joseph thinks about Rita and realizes that she doesn't remember him. The man begins to remember his past, how he should have been punished. In the throne room, the woman urges the emperor to send the prince to war against the Western alliances, which will suppress Joseph's aura. This proposal arose because of the boy's peculiarity, the fact that he was born a hunter. And this is unthinkable. The emperor doesn't understand how this could have happened. At the same time, a proposal appears to send Carlo along with the prince, which surprises Joseph. This frightens the children, because Carlo is only 6 years old and simply won't survive in difficult conditions. Joseph shouts and urges them not to insult his mother's honor, and reminds them that he is the legitimate son of the emperor. The boy screams that he sold his soul to the devil, blinded by power. Everyone present in the hall is surprised, does not believe his words, and asks about it again. The woman in white says that such an act cannot be eliminated by battle and service to the empire, because it is simply unthinkable, and it is necessary to think of something else. Therefore, the only way out in such a situation is to overthrow the prince. The emperor agrees with this and decides to send the boy to the battlefield. After a while, the soldiers discuss Joseph's abilities and marvel at his durability. The boy was bullied, feared, and no one dared to approach him. The emperor's hope for Joseph's natural death did not come true. Therefore, he decides to send the boy to the border to defeat the monsters, which is equivalent to death. However, Joseph believes that by fulfilling his duty, His Majesty will forgive him. Suddenly, someone pulls the boy out of his thoughts. The girl, young Rita, wonders why she is here alone and if she is lost. Joseph acts closed off, saying he wants to die, which surprises the girl. The boy continues to act hostile and explains that he is a demon hunter, and the girl asks him to play with her. And she doesn't understand what he is telling her. Joseph sincerely does not understand why the girl does not sense his aura. The boy tells her that he is a dangerous man, but Rita doesn't understand what he means. He hands her a rose, withered in his hands. However, Rita is not afraid and says it is very interesting, but she doesn't understand why she can't play with him. Joseph wonders why she doesn't know who demon hunters are. He asks the girl if the fact that he made the flower wither scares her. Rita says she can also do something similar and takes out a bottle of poison. Joseph sees drops of poison that make the flower wither and tells Rita to be careful and not to boast about her abilities. The boy tells her that people in the empire might hate him if a person has power and masters alchemy. The girl laughs and says she doesn't care and that she will leave Spezian. Rita tells Joseph that nobody talks to her in the mansion, and he realizes how lonely she seems. Joseph remembers that this lasted 15 days, and he forgot about his plans. Currently, Rita is exploring different terrains in an attempt to find a solution to Katen's problem. The ancient land of Katana is called Cursed. It has a dry soil structure and is easily destroyed. The girl argues with Manuel about the soil and remembers that he also disliked it in the past. But then he didn't show hostility so openly. Rita gets up and plans to go explore the soil on her own, releasing the butler. Manuel asks Rita why she is studying the land, to which the girl explains her intention to help Katen. The young butler says that Sabrina's assumption was correct, and Rita is going to destroy Katen's agriculture with the help of alchemy. And the Archduke is aware of everything. Rita is surprised because she kept Sabrina with her, but she is lurking around the castle and spreads false rumors about the girl. Rita remembers that Sabrina lived a comfortable life and befriended the main character's father. The girl understands that if Sabrina hadn't been George's mistress, she would have become Rita's father's mistress. Furthermore, the girl is known as the only daughter of Count Cardinal, but the reality is that she is considered an illegitimate daughter in the Count's mansion. However, Rita is now an archduchess and doesn't need to choose her words to say everything directly. To study the soil, Rita arrives at Kenstein Plains and sees that the soil is indeed gray. The heroine tells Sabrina, who came with her to dig the earth. The maid feels ashamed and doesn't want to fulfill the request, as she is wearing clothes donated by Prince George, and she doesn't want to dirty them. Rita is surprised that George doesn't even hide his relationship after their wedding. Sabrina argues. She promises to show the prince's letter to prove her words, because in the future George promised to make her his wife, which surprises Rita. The protagonist does not accept this behavior from the maid, so she points out her status, and threatens that if Sabrina disobeys again, she will walk to the duchy. By nightfall, the heroine realizes that the area here is very arid, like a desert. The girls are about to leave, barely waiting for Sabrina, when suddenly they hear the maid scream. Sabrina looks very scared. It turns out that it is not a monster chasing her, as the girl thought, but a wolf. Sabrina hides behind Rita, panicked. However, Rita knows what will happen next, so she is not too worried. The heroine tells her maids to run, and turns around to see that Sabrina has already disappeared. Rita creates a protective circle, using alchemy, ready to defend herself against the wolf's attack. However, someone throws the animal back with one hand, and the girl is surprised. Rita guesses who it could be. The girl sees her husband, Joseph, in front of her. The man asks how the girl is feeling. Rita replies that she is fine, and that she was not injured. At the same time, the soldiers who came with Joseph bring Sabrina, who cowardly fled from her lover. The maid fainted, and Rita supposes it was out of fear. Among themselves, the soldiers are surprised that Madame tried to protect the maids. Rita is happy to realize that now the amount of rumors about her may decrease. Joseph says he was worried about his wife because it was late and asks what brought her to this place. The girl replies that she wants to take several soil samples to study them further. Suddenly, Manuel appears and says that Rita wants to curse the land of Kenshin Plains. Joseph reprimands the young man and tells him to watch his tongue. Rita joins the conversation and says that she is not a witch and cannot cast curses. The man calms the girl, telling her that he never thought of her as a witch. Joseph also adds that when they arrive at the castle, he wants to hear what Rita thinks about the land. The man orders them to take care of the wolf, and Rita is surprised for a moment. The girl asks her husband's men to stop, and Joseph doesn't understand what is happening. Rita explains that the she-wolf is actually a pregnant she-wolf. The girl remembers that an evil and aggressive monster can be tamed if raised from infancy, when it was not exposed to magic, and she remembers that this is how Saint Evelyn, George's wife, tamed the dragon Ginevra. For a moment, Rita regrets not being able to tame the dragon, the king of monsters. The girl looks at the she-wolf and realizes that such a monster would be a good companion for practice. Rita realizes that her mother has exhausted her strength, but the heroine can save her son. Rita timidly explains this to Joseph, who calmly accepts her words. The girl is surprised by his reaction. It was unexpected for her. The man confirms her words and says he will not kill the she-wolf. Rita thanks her husband, but he says that the she-wolf cannot be left in the middle of the road, and that something must be thought of. Rita is happy and tells him not to worry. The girl uses her magic and casts a spell. The heroine thinks it would be a good idea to prepare a cave for the monsters in advance, and promises to take care of moving the monster to the forest. Sometime later, already in the library of Katen Castle, Rita is practicing. She studies the soil and notices how damp it is and hopes there will be no problems planting. At that moment, someone asks permission to enter the library, and the girl allows it. The heroine's husband enters and says the girl was looking for him, which she confirms, and says he wants to show something. The man thinks to himself that the library has become his wife's laboratory. The girl hands the man a container with soil and asks if he knows where it comes from. Joseph notices the color and wonders if the soil is red. Rita denies it and says the container holds soil from Kenstein Plains. The heroine shares her plan to change Katen's soil to red soil and asks her husband to take charge of the research of Katen's academics. Although there are no alchemists in Katen, there are many scientists who study the flora and the fauna of the northern region. Rita says she will use her inheritance, not Katen's budget, until she proves that the soil is suitable, to which the Archduke asks her why she needs it. The girl explains that she promised to do everything possible while she was Grand Archduchess. Joseph asks his wife what she means by her words. The girl is surprised for a second by his expression, as she is sure she wrote everything down in the contract. Joseph says he plans to build Katen and hands her the contract he drafted the day before. The man asks if it is true that the only thing Rita wants is to fulfill the divorce clause when the time comes. The girl confirms it and asks him not to look for her if she leaves Spezion. In fact, Rita privately hopes to leave the empire with her daughter to ensure Ivonne's safety. Joseph asks the girl if he understood correctly that in the future, he does not need to look for a wife who will someday disappear. The girl feels that the man is angry. Rita says she didn't consider this clause a flaw in the contract. Rita is sure that when she leaves, Joseph will be happy with the woman he loves. However, the Archduke seems dejected and annoyed. The man says he is fine, but the girl doubts it. Sometime later, at Katen Castle, Rita receives the farmers she was expecting. Internally, the girl is surprised that only 3 farmers asked to borrow land from His Majesty. However, they didn't even show up, even though the archduchess called them. Dante notices that the girl seems thoughtful and explains that Katen's heritage is stubborn, and they feel a strong aversion to nobles, so they won't listen to the archduchess. However, the girl understands to herself that the reason may be her aversion to the cardinal family. The history of the civil war between the South and the North has deep roots, where Cardinal, the southern family, had a very bad reputation in the northern regions. All this happened because Count Cardinal captured the Caraplane, Katen's only granary, and also provided false documents that the plane had been stolen. The girl understands that she needs to be friendly due to her position, so she warmly thanks the visiting farmers. The unknown blonde feels embarrassed and says there is no need to thank her. Rita asks if the farmers checked the land she gave them through Dante, and asks if she believes the red soil is Katen's soil. Among those who came is a Mr. Humberto, about whom the main character knows a lot. The girl remembers that even before returning to the past, Humberto's son died because of the Cardinal family. Humberto was one of those who used Cardinal in his transactions. The man came to Rita with the reproach of returning her son to her, to which the girl demanded the return of her father's money. Currently, the girl remembers that she spoke her words coldly. Humberto gets up from the table and curtly says he will not forgive the girl, to which another farmer agrees. Both men leave and say never to call them for such nonsense. However, the blonde stays with Rita. The heroine hands the girl a bag of soil and asks if she would like to try it. The girl is willing to accept on the condition that Rita forgives her father's mistakes. Rita asks if the blonde is Humberto's daughter, to which the stranger is surprised that the archduchess knows him. Rita agrees, and the blonde wonders where the children hired by the count are sent. Because the father is worried, because there is no news of his son. Rita remembers that around that time, a tragedy occurred in the Surt mine. The heroine plans to go to Surt not only for this reason, but also because the black dragon egg is buried there. The blonde timidly nods with the girl. Rita tells the girl that she knows where her brother works. After a while, Rita tells her husband her intention to go to the Surt mine. Joseph warns his wife that monsters are appearing in the north of the mine, and the girl confirms it. The man says this is not the place where Rita should go, but the girl convinces her husband that she is not doing anything that negatively affects him, and asks him not to worry. The man explains that he is not worried about himself. Rita looks at him without understanding, not knowing what he refers to, but Joseph remains silent. The girl thinks about it and realizes that lately she doesn't recognize or understand Joseph at all. It turns out that recently Sabrina volunteered to become Joseph's maid, trying to seduce him using underwear while cleaning. However, for such an act she was immediately fired. What surprised Rita was how polite her husband was, but he burst into the girl's room after the incident with Sabrina. Rita thinks to herself that he rarely seems concerned, but at that moment she thought she might have misunderstood something. Rita knows that she doesn't show her feelings often, and that she is not easy to read, but his behavior confuses her. After a while, Rita and her husband go to the mine together. Joseph went with Rita because it was reported that there was a monster in the mine, so he decided to go with his wife. Rita tells the Archduke that he didn't have to go. Joseph agrees with her, but it turns out that new types of monsters have appeared, and he must check everything personally. And Rita wonders if the accident has anything to do with the monsters. The couple continues on their way, and the girl hopes the problem will be solved. Upon arriving at the mine, Rita and Joseph are greeted by Milan, the director of the Surt mine. The manager asks what brought the couple to the mine, to which Joseph replies that he received news about monsters, and he needs to check everything. Milan agrees and asks to escort the Archduke and Archduchess to the indicated place. A little boy responds to the manager's request, ready to bid farewell to the couple. Joseph says the mine can be dangerous, but Rita ignores him. The boy asks where they should take the couple first, and Joseph asks to see the place where the monster was first encountered. The mine is dark, so the guide says to use lamps, but he sees that the Archduke's eyes are glowing. The boy looks surprised that the man's eyes are shining, and he doesn't believe he saw what was only talked about in gossip. Rita realizes that it is normal to be surprised by this, because it is also the first time she has seen her husband's eyes like this. Unlike the abilities of paladins, the powers of demon hunters are looked down upon. Joseph asks if everything is all right. Rita lights up his face and says that her husband's eyes are very beautiful. After these words, Joseph seems to start feeling embarrassed. Suddenly, a scream comes from the depths of the mine, and Rita asks what happened. 3 days before the trip to the Cert mine, Rona, the maid, thinks about how busy Rita has been lately. Some time ago, Kenstein brought a monster baby named Vivi. During all this time, Rita trained the puppy alone. Rona remembers how surprised people were when they brought the monster to Katen, and realizes that chaos will ensue if they find out she is training it. The maid approaches the archduchess in the forest and sees Rita sitting next to Vivi. The main character explains that she was playing with the puppy, but when she moved away, he fell asleep, and Rona realizes that Vivi looks like a little girl. Rita agrees with this and says that when the puppy sleeps, he has an angel's face. Rona noticed that Rita had a lonely face when taking care of Vivi, as if the heroine was remembering someone. In the present time, the couple got trapped in a landslide, but Joseph saved his wife. The man asks if Rita is okay. The girl replies that she is fine and suggests that the mine has collapsed, but Joseph thinks it's a trap. Rita wonders who could have done this and remembers Milan's servant, and asks him if he is okay with Joseph. The man says he heard breathing behind the wall, so there is no need to worry too much. The girl relaxes and is happy that everything is fine. Joseph realizes how kind Rita is, as always. The man goes back to his past, remembering how long ago Rita helped him. She doesn't know who he really is and how kind she is and always cares about others. In the past, the girl reasoned that the deposed crown, Prince Angelos, was also a demon hunter, and most likely he was exiled for this. Joseph asks little Rita if she is afraid of the prince, because they say he is a demon. The girl is surprised that Joseph believes such rumors, because there is nothing wrong with being strong. Unexpectedly, Rita tells Joseph that he is not a demon and asks him not to die, which surprises the boy. At that moment, the girl gives the boy a ticket to Odebelly, telling him that in this country, demon hunters can live in peace. Joseph seems surprised. He doesn't understand what Rita is talking about. The girl explains that, compared to her, Joseph needs it more. Rita says that in any case, she cannot go there because of her father, but she hopes to definitively leave Spezion in the future. The girl asks Joseph to help her when she is ready to be free. Joseph realizes that he could not have reached Odebelly alone and did not help Rita with this. In the present time, the man directs his attention to the girl and asks if her leg is okay, to which the girl replies that there is nothing to worry about. The girl thinks to herself that she sprained her leg. Suddenly, Joseph takes off his shirt, and Rita is very surprised by this. A man bandages his wife's leg, and the girl is surprised by her husband's gesture. Having finished with the bandage, Rita thanks Joseph for his care. Rita is confused about what is happening. She doesn't want to get away from Joseph. The girl remembers the terms of their contract. She remembers that the marriage was not made for love, and says that Joseph can fall in love with someone else. However, despite this, Rita wants to maintain a peaceful relationship with him. Like friends, Joseph reacts strangely to Rita's words. The girl thinks her husband is perplexed by what he found out about his secret lover. The girl tries to change the subject of conversation and asks how they should get out. While continuing to try to find a way out, the heroine suddenly notices something. Rita notices a small passage and wants to try to go through it. Suddenly, Mylene appears in front of the couple, followed by a dragon, which makes Rita scared for a moment. After a while, the girl sits tied up in the mine. She realizes that Mylene is the one who destroyed the mine. At the same time, the man orders the dragon, Genev, to destroy the ceiling. Rita wonders how he can control the black dragon. The main character assumes that Mylene is a tamer. Tamers are those who can subjugate and control monsters with inner strength. They use a dark aura like demon hunters. However, Rita doubts that Mylene is a tamer. The girl realizes that the dragon feels pain and wonders what Mylene did. The man begins to get angry, shouting how much he owes for managing the mine and that the tools for finding monsters have become control tools. Rita understands that the instrument is a remote control ball and that if you use these expensive things, its energy will run out. Mylene continues to be furious, shouting that he has lost all his profits since the minerals ran out, and Kimmer's experiment failed, and Rita reacts to this. Now the man turned to the girl and explained that the experiment failed due to lack of funding and transport. Rita asks if Mylene will complete the experiment if her father supports him. Unexpectedly, the man says he is simply using people as material, which surprises the girl. Mylene explains that he found fantastic boys to team up with Geneva. Rita starts getting angry and says out loud that it is better for people like Mylene to die right here. The girl's words make the man laugh. He is preparing to show the girl his chimera. Due to his speed, Rita does not have time to react to the man's movement. However, at the same moment, Joseph appears behind Rita, having come in response to the noise. The Archduke draws his weapon and tells Rita to close her eyes. The girl gets angry, realizing how dirty the person at the head of the Order of the Saints is. At that moment, Mylin, riding Genevieve, strives to leave the mine. The main character understands that it is now necessary to gather the necessary evidence, so she starts using her magic. Rita remembers her father, Rosco Cardinale, who was the head of the Holy Society, influencing the aristocracy due to his close relationship with the Pope. Therefore, it is obvious that he also sponsored George's paladins. The girl understands that if everyone finds out that a person like him is conducting experiments on a living being, this will have a negative effect on his career. Suddenly, someone kills Mylin, who is sitting on Geneva. The girl gets angry for a moment. What fool would think of something like that? The man who killed Mylin greets Rita and tells her that he and the girl haven't seen each other for a long time. The girl agrees with the words of the brunette who came. The man suddenly kisses the main character's hand. Brunette, Oscar Espina, the head of the Assassins Guild, Espina, tells the girl that he missed her very much. He leans towards Rita and reproaches her for not telling him about her wedding, but then compliments her. But the girl asks him not to come closer. At that moment, Joseph appears between the girl and the brunette, protecting Rita. The Archduke politely asks Oscar to step aside. The brunette reproaches Joseph for pointing a gun at a man without having time to introduce himself, to which the Archduke replies that Oscar is a bully threatening a weak woman. The brunette explains his rudeness as a normal past, unlike Joseph. Oscar continues provoking the Archduke, saying there are rumors that Joseph is the crown prince who was supposed to die. Rita intervenes in this argument, saying that Oscar should not use her father's name when dealing with her husband. The girl remembers that, if the past hasn't changed, the brunette is still the heroine's father's house dog. Oscar offers to take Rita to her father. Joseph asks his wife if she wants to talk to the count. Rita looks at her husband and wonders why he has that expression on his face, thinking that from the outside, he looks like a spoiled daddy's girl. Although the heroine realizes she doesn't want to talk to her father now is not the time to show her hostility towards him. At that moment, Rosco, the girl's father, appears, asking her what she forgot, why she got involved in the family business. Rita's father reminds her that her task is to seduce Prince George to learn about Carlo's weaknesses. The girl pretends, says how much she loves Prince George. However, Rita tells Rosco there is no reason to worry, but in her mind, she understands that people like her father and George do not die easily. Rita asks her father why Joseph doesn't buy the cert mine. Rosco asks if the Archduke would agree to such a deal. Rita promises to talk to her husband and tells her father not to worry. Rosco admits that Rita is not entirely useless. Internally, Rita reacts to the words about her uselessness, but does not show it. The girl remembers how her father called her worm, parasite when she was little. Rita remembers that once she couldn't wait for her father to need her. However, now the heroine realizes that it was very stupid. Sometime later, Rita arrives at Geneva. The dragon has flown away to protect its egg. The girl understands that Ginevra doesn't have much time left, so she promises to take care of the dragon's offspring. The animal dies, and Rita takes the dragon egg. The girl carefully treats the future dragon, promising to take care of and love it. On the way home, Rita tells Rona that there are children locked in Milen's barn who need to be rescued and brought here. The girl draws attention to the place where Genevieve died, which has turned into a magic stone of special purity, which can be economically useful for Katen. In a past life, Saint Evelina raised Genevite's puppy, and tamed it, so the mine became famous. Rita realizes that she needs to talk to her husband about buying a mine. The girl decisively starts a conversation about the mine with Joseph. The man reacts to her words by calling the mine a pile of stones. The girl asks if Katen can buy the mine because she knows how to use it to make money. Rita is afraid of being presented as a liar, so she tells her husband that she will not insist if he does not believe. Unexpectedly for Rita, Joseph accepts her proposal to buy the mine. The man asks again if this is not what his wife wanted. Rita tells her husband that if someone offers her to start a business together, telling her it will be a good property, she should run, to which the husband replies that he cannot jump off a moving carriage. Rita tells Joseph that she sincerely wants to help Katen develop the region. The couple continues on their way home, and Rita privately plans to secure her husband in the future. Sometime later in Katana, Rita meets Humberto's son, Oli. Rona leads the boy guide to the heroine and tells him it was easy to find, to which the boy replies that he knows the mine paths well. Rita realizes how smart Oli is and is glad he wasn't hurt, and offers to take him to his father. Oli says he hasn't received his salary from the count yet, so when he gets home, he will only have an extra bite left. Rita tells him not to worry and promises that the Archduke's family will compensate everything. Ollie is surprised and a little embarrassed by the heroine's words. Rita asks Rona to take Ollie to Dante to train as an official, and also tells the maid to look for suitable jobs for the other children. Rita wonders, since she needs to hire children to work, should she increase the price of magic stones for sale. Ollie is taken to his father, and the family is reunited. Rita remembers to herself that at some point she also looked at Ivonne. Selina, a blonde, thanks the main character for her help, to which Rita asks her to help convince other farmers to use red soil. The blonde says she already used the land, even though her field is not as large as her father's. Rita is surprised. She is a little worried because she is not a professional, so she is worried. However, Selina praises the heroine and says that many crops have sprouted on this land. Rita is a little surprised, but very happy about the success. The girl realizes that it is the first time she has used alchemy, not just for herself. At that moment, the Archduke runs to the girl and takes her by the cheeks, asking what happened to her. Joseph explains that his wife's eyes turned red. Rita calms him down and tells him it is from surprise and happiness because she has achieved success, and her red soil is working. Joseph is close, and Rita explains that now she wants to distribute the red soil among the farmers of Katen. Joseph smiles and says he will tell Dante that the effectiveness of the soil created by Rita has been proven. The girl smiles sincerely and warmly, thanking her husband. Joseph freezes and Rita seems a little embarrassed. After a while in Joseph's office, Dante asks how many people are being hired to develop Madame's red land. Joseph pays no attention to Dante's words. All his thoughts are occupied with Rita and her smile. The Archduke thinks he is a bad husband, and Dante, worried about the master's condition, asks what is wrong with him. Joseph asks what month it is, and Dante tells him that today is the first day of August. Joseph says it is still cold and asks Dante to control the temperature in Rita's room. The butler says he is sure that the archduchess's room is warm, to which Joseph replies that he wants the temperature in the room to be like summer. In fact, Joseph is worried that Rita will have difficulty living in Katen. These lands are cold for a girl who grew up in the south. Suddenly, Joseph asks if it is true that no one wants to see their benefactor tired. The butler agrees and wonders why the Archduke asks this. Joseph rubs his eyes tiredly, confirming that this is the case. After a while, Rita sits and talks with the farmer, asking if it is true that people will not use the red soil. Humberto says that Selina is already cultivating the land, but Ricky opposes due to rumors that something is hidden in the red soil. Rita tenses up and is surprised by the existence of such rumors, while Humberto asks if it is true that she acquired the failed mine. The man clarifies that whatever the reason, he believes Rita. Suddenly, the girl asks him how he knew she acquired the mine. The girl asks more about the rumor, to which she receives the answer from a man who heard how she spent a large sum of money on this territory. Humberto explains that an official who frequently visits the city spoke about this. Rita begins to guess who they are talking about. Most likely Humberto refers to Manuel. Manuel is Dante's nephew, who lost his parents as a child, so the boy became an important relative for Joseph. The Archduke also became an important person for Manuel after all. Joseph took care of him since childhood. Perhaps it is because he thinks about how lonely Prince Carlo feels in the imperial palace that Joseph came to love Manuel like a brother. However, after Dante, Manuel will take the place of the Archduke family's butler. Rita understands that she was very arrogant and careless. At that moment, in Joseph's office, Manuel demonstrates to the Archduke that Rita is deceiving him, wanting to sell Katen's mine to compensate for the damage. However, Joseph reacts calmly and says that everything is fine. The man is convinced that if he helps his wife, it will be enough for Joseph. At that moment, Rita enters the room and asks what her husband's words mean. The girl approaches and repeats her question. Rita does not wait for her husband's answer and touches his chest, noticing how fast his heart is beating, and that it must be stress and fear that she is lying to him again. Joseph denies it and says she is mistaken. The girl thinks to herself that she was looking for Manuel, but did not expect to hear this. Rita turns to the young butler and tells him that she had a reason to buy the mine, and that he should wait until merchants start extracting magic stones to believe her words. Manuel gets embarrassed and starts worrying, saying that this is impossible and that only gold can be found in mines, and there are no magic stones there. To this, Rita says she doesn't care whether the butler believes her or not. However, turning to Joseph, the girl tells him that the Archduke's faith is very important to her. Rita warns her husband to leave the help for later, and that if he shows himself to be so soft, this could become his weakness, with which Joseph agrees. Then the girl turns again to Manuel and tells him she wants to tell him something, and asks him to follow her. After leaving her husband, Rita realizes that the butler, who trained as a knight, will not suffer harm from her cane, so she must be tougher to be more effective. Rita hits Manuel, and he starts making excuses, saying that he is only worried about the Archduke. The girl severely says that she knows the butler spread a false rumor about her regarding the purchase of a mine, which surprises the boy. The heroine reminds Manuel of an important rule for family servants. They must not spread rumors about the masters. Rita says severely and coldly that anyone who makes a mistake must be punished. The heroine punishes the butler and tells Manuel that she understands his concern for Joseph, because they are like a family. Rita tells the boy that even if Joseph said that he would harm her, Manuel had no right to tell others about the family's situation due to difficulties in Katen. The girl tells the young man that it was thanks to the Archduke that many began to live in Katana. Rita reproaches Manuel, tells him not to deprive people's trust. To herself, the protagonist supposes that the butler spread the rumor that the girl is a witch of the Cardinal family, who takes advantage of her husband's position and kindness. Of course, people are worried about their Archduke, but because of such rumors, Joseph will feel bad about these rumors, so Rita thinks the young man couldn't have thought of such a thing alone. To herself, Rita didn't think she would have to compete with George. It seemed to her that everything was fine, but this terrible relationship persists, both in the past and now. Unexpectedly, the girl asks if Sabrina is related to this, which surprises the young man. Earlier, Manuel met a maid sitting idly, to which the girl told him that she wasn't here to run errands. Sabrina confuses Manuel by asking if he has heard that Joseph bought the cert mine, to which the butler replies negatively. The girl says that the mine originally belonged to Cardinal and accidentally hints if Rita deceived her husband. The young man doubts the veracity of her words, and Sabrina continues to press, saying she heard that the entire mine collapsed. And in general, Joseph had no reason to buy the mine, unlike Rita. Sabrina mischievously adds that she served Rita for a long time and knows that she didn't help anyone of her own free will. Manuel gives up and agrees that he heard the news. Sabrina adds that the same applies to the mine and the red soil, and adds that she doesn't know what Madame is doing, and that all her actions are suspicious. Manuel thinks about it and agrees that all the maid's words are true. The young man decides to talk to Ricky, as he is one of the most influential among the young people. So if he says this, people will no longer believe Rita. Sabrina encourages him and tells the young man that it is a great idea. Manuel feels embarrassed by Sabrina's compliments. At this point, Rita forces the butler back to reality from his memories, repeating her question about Sabrina. Manuel denies the maid's involvement, but Rita privately understands that she is definitely involved. Rita remembers that she allowed the maid to stay to find out George's plans, but she didn't expect Sabrina to plot against her, so Rita thinks it's better for the maid to return to the Cardinal house. Sometime later, Rita reflects alone on Sabrina, how she admired Rita from an early age, and was a maid loved by Rosco due to her position in Spezian. Rita is thinking about where to get the goddess's crown. Rona brings dessert to the lady, and Rita thinks that, having received the crown, she won't have to keep Sabrina close to her. The goddess's crown is a relic that transmits Lawrence's voice and is possessed by George, who interprets prophecies to his liking. Rita remembers that George calls himself the God-chosen emperor, which doesn't seem funny at all. Suddenly, Rita asks Rona to bring Sabrina to her, and the maid is surprised. Rona tells the lady that Sabrina went to meet Prince George, and says she heard about the arrival of a man at the Duke's family estate. Rita is surprised by this turn of events. She didn't expect to hear news about George. After a while, approaching the room where George was, Rita wonders why he came. Upon entering the room, George greets the girl and tells her he hasn't heard from her since she left. The man approaches Rita and asks if she is okay. The girl understands that if she behaves correctly with him, she will be able to let Sabrina go. George explains that he came to meet Joseph, so the girl shouldn't worry. Suddenly, the man leans towards Rita and tells her that the masking potion she gave him has run out. Joseph touches Rita's cheek and says he wonders how she gets along with Joseph. Rita is disgusted by this gesture. She throws off George's hand and tells him she is very well and that he doesn't have to worry about her, which surprises the man. Suddenly, Rita changes the subject and asks George if he has any side effects from his potion. The man is surprised and asks what side effects we are talking about, and the girl replies that she cannot say exactly what she should be careful about. Rita tells George to be careful not to overdose, and realizes that even a small dose can have side effects. While the man thinks about the heroine's words, Rita thinks about her potion plans to make a fake medicine that, if taken for a long time, causes a great loss of strength. Looking at George, Rita thinks that he is usually very calm and cannot act arrogantly, and if he appears again, she should stop using the masking potion. Unexpectedly, the girl asks where Sabrina is and says she heard that the maid went to meet the prince. George winks at Rita and tells her that he dismissed her because he thought the main character's mood would be ruined because of the maid. The girl doesn't understand what George is talking about and asks again, to which he is surprised by her reaction. Rita explains that he probably knows the girls' relationship with each other and that she is her servant. So it is Rita who gives orders to Sabrina. George notices that Sabrina serves the main character well, and the girl agrees, and says that the maid is smart and helpful. The man tells Rita that because of her description of Sabrina, he wants to keep the maid because there are not many people in the palace he can trust. Rita listens silently to George's words, and the man adds that Sabrina can replace the main character for him. As a result, George asks Rita if she wants him to take Sabrina away, to which the girl realizes that he has been testing her from the beginning, wanting the heroine to be jealous. Rita is disgusted by his words and actions, but remains silent, and George adds that he only needs a woman to visit the black market. Rita immediately reacts to his words about the black market. The main characteristic of this market is that it takes place at night, and people buy various goods there. The girl wonders why the man needed to go to the black market, and not even she. Her assistant for a long time in the past can find the answer. George reveals that he originally planned to send Rita there, but then thought it would be better to send Sabrina there. George falls silent and waits for Rita's reaction, to which the girl asks him if he really intended to send the maid there. Convinced that this is true, the girl gets up and gives consent for George to take Sabrina away and do whatever he wishes. Then Rita leaves and Sabrina approaches George and tells him she misses him very much. However, the man remains silent and does not react to the maid, thinking about the main character, who, in his opinion, left him alone. George remembers that Rita always looked at him with worried eyes. The man does not understand the reason for the change in atmosphere in his relationship with the heroine. Wanting to know what is wrong, he turns to Sabrina. George asks what kind of relationship Rita has with the Archduke, and the maid replies that they are husband and wife. Sabrina says that the girl and Joseph's relationship is normal. They don't even share the same bedroom, which surprises George. The man notices that Rita has become more beautiful and agrees with the phrase that Southern women are like roses. George continues saying that roses that bloom in spring are the most beautiful, and Sabrina starts getting nervous because George has never mentioned Rita before. The maid feels offended by the man's words and his thoughts about another woman. She is more nervous. Sabrina feels less sure of herself, but hides it and asks George if he will take her with him to the castle. The man says that, when he spoke about this with Rita, she wasn't against Sabrina leaving, but George adds that he plans to stay in Catania for a while and observe the situation. The maid wonders why she should go with George as a servant, to which he explains that his mother would be against marrying a girl like Sabrina. Sabrina gets even more nervous, not happy with the man's words, so she asks what is happening with her son. Surprising George, he asks what she means, and she replies that she is pregnant with his child. Sabrina blushes and nervously asks the man if their child will be illegitimate. George still doesn't believe the maid, so he asks again about her situation. The girl affirms that this is his child. Sabrina is confused because George doesn't believe her, so she asks him to his face if he doubts her. She gets up from her seat and shouts at the man, telling him she came to Katen for him. George also gets up and starts calming the girl, telling her he believes her. At this moment, outside the door is Rita, who had been eavesdropping on the maid's conversation with George the whole time, and her promise to speak with her mother for Sabrina's sake, after which the heroine leaves so as not to be caught. After talking to the man, Sabrina leaves him, thinking to herself that she needs to strengthen her position in the imperial family as soon as possible. At that moment, Rita comes down the stairs to the maid, who, as if nothing had happened, asks her if the maid is done talking to George. Sabrina realizes that the archduchess must be worried because the maid was with George. Sabrina directly asks Rita if she wants to send a maid to the palace. Rita confirms it, suggesting it will be more convenient for both, to which Sabrina asks why the knights decided this. Sabrina starts getting a little angry and asks Rita if she is afraid that Sabrina will take her husband away, or that the maid has taken him away from her lover. Rita thinks about it and replies that perhaps the maid stole George from her. However, Rita adds that she has no complaints against Sabrina and let her take George, surprising the maid. Sabrina asks the lady again, and Rita explains that she is no longer interested in George. The maid doesn't give up and says that she is the one who loves George and he loves her, so that in the future she can become empress. The main character approaches the maid and interrupts her, telling her that George's power will never be hers. The main character adds that no matter how beautiful Sabrina is, she will not be able to obtain George's power. Rita lets the maid go and adds that George doesn't really love Sabrina, which surprises and offends the maid. The main character says that Sabrina will never get what she wants from a man. Sabrina gets nervous and tells Rita that they are different. Desperate, Sabrina adds that she knows how to get a man's love. Rita decides not to argue with the maid, so she wishes her to receive a lot of love because Rita doesn't need it. The main character turns to leave, thinking about what love is. Suddenly, behind her back, Sabrina says she feels sorry for the child that Rita will one day give birth to. In her mind, Rita imagines Ivonne and Sabrina, adds that Rita might even give birth. Sabrina adds fuel to the fire by wondering how a woman who is treated like a log can even get pregnant. Finally, Rita turns to Sabrina and stares at her, scaring the maid. Rita approaches Sabrina and demands that she repeat her words, to which the maid begins to retreat, and she is afraid of Rita. As she moves away from Rita, Sabrina slips and begins to fall. The maid assures the main character that she didn't say any of that at the moment of her fall. Sabrina doesn't have time to grab onto anything. George also reacts to the sound of the fall, goes out into the hallway, and sees Sabrina lying on the floor, clutching her stomach and looking at the prince. The man runs to the girl and takes her, calming her down, and shouts at the servants who came, reproaching them for not having done anything. Rita approaches the victim and invites the servants to take Sabrina to the doctor, and they agree. George approaches the main character, reproaching her for what she is doing, to which the girl tells him to be polite, because he is in front of the servants of Katen and should be more educated. George pays no attention to her words, approaches and grabs her clothes, menacingly drawing close to Rita, and reproaches her for having lost her mind, since she behaves like this with Sabrina, who is pregnant with his child. However, the girl does not react at all to the man's words, says that the maid herself fell down the stairs, and Rita had nothing to do with it. George is still angry. He says that he treated Rita well because she is the daughter of a count. Suddenly, Joseph appears next to Rita and George, who interrupts the prince's speech, saying that he heard about George's arrival in Katen as a guest. The Archduke approaches George and takes Rita away from him. Covering the girl with his hand, he looks severely at the prince and asks what he is doing with his wife. Joseph continues to stand next to his wife and turns to George, telling him that, if he has something to say, he should speak to the Archduke, to which the Crown Prince reminds him that Joseph's wife is from the Cardinal family. However, the Archduke pays no attention to these words and replies that who, if not the husband, should protect his wife. Rita realizes that Joseph looked at her, wondering if something serious had happened to her because of George. The girl assures him that everything is fine for her, and the small wound on her neck is just a scratch. However, the girl's words do not stop her husband, and he demands that the servants call Dr. Nicholas. But George immediately intervenes in the conversation, demanding that they examine Sabrina first. But the Archduke does not respond to George's demand, declaring that the doctor is a family doctor, and Rita, as Joseph's wife, is a priority. The Crown Prince is angry at Joseph's words and behavior, So he addresses the departing couple and tells them that Joseph seems to have forgotten why he married Rita. The Archduke listens to George say that the Archduke's brother is still in the imperial palace, and implies that no one would be surprised if he suddenly died. Sometime later, Rita and George are with Dr. Nicholas, who treated the girl's wound. And now he was giving her recommendations, and also telling her that it seemed she was not getting enough rest. Joseph asks the girl if this is true, to which she begins to make excuses, saying that she is fine. Nicholas adds that Joseph, being the girl's husband, does not know that she has insomnia due to the cold nights in Katen. It is difficult for a southern girl to sleep. Rita assures him she is fine, but Joseph ignores her words and asks Nicholas what needs to be done. And the doctor notes that the couple sleeps in separate rooms. Nicholas says that for the sake of the girl's health, the spouses need to sleep together, which surprises Rita. Sometime later, sitting at her desk, Rita is outraged by Dr. Nicholas's decision. The girl is angry about her husband's reaction to the doctor's words. Joseph's reaction to the doctor's recommendation seemed strange to Rita. She remembers that her husband didn't say a word afterwards. The heroine sits at the table and decides to herself that the best solution is not to sleep. Rita remembers how George showed up at the Archduke's house and caused a stir, talking about a child of imperial blood and demanding compensation. However, Dr. Nicholas, after examining Sabrina, revealed that the girl is not pregnant, so there is no need to worry about her. George is angry at Sabrina's lies, and Rita remembers to herself that in the past the maid was not pregnant with the prince's child. And now she must feel ashamed of the doctor's words. Standing next to the angry George, Rita thinks that by having the goddesses crown George will not threaten the heroine. Rita understands that if she manages to intercept the relic, she will no longer have to please George, and she will know all his other plans. Sometime later, Rita receives Oscar, who asks if she needs his help. Rita confirms his words, and the man says that the girl is stubborn. The girl asks him if he will help her, to which Oscar replies that he doesn't care. However, Rita turns to the man again and again and asks him to help her. Oscar smiles and agrees with the girl, saying he will try to listen to her. Rita begins to say that she needs to get something from the black market, which surprises Oscar, because the heroine can send a maid if it is a normal auction. Rita shouts at the man, telling him that, in the first place, she won't have enough money for the auction, which surprises Oscar. Oscar approaches the girl and jokingly tells her that she, being the Archduke's wife, is borrowing money from the assassin. Rita grabs Oscar by the tie and pulls him close, telling him this is not a request, but an order she has given him. The man doesn't hold back and asks the girl if she is behaving like Count Rosco. Rita realizes that if she doesn't get the goddess's crown at the auction, George will trace the relic. Rita understands that discovering that Oscar is her father's right-hand man who took the relic, and in this case, George will hold a grudge against the girl's father. The girl releases the man's clothes and tells him to just bring what she asked for. Rita thinks and worries about having found the wrong person. The heroine knows that if she shows Oscar how she clings to George, the mercenary will lose interest and calm down, so the girl doesn't need to make this mistake like in the past. Meanwhile, Manuel bursts in on the Archduke, saying that a man has come to see Rita. In the office, Joseph and Dante are discussing something, and when the young butler bursts in, the Archduke is surprised and Dante gets angry at Manuel for not respecting his manners. The elder butler tells Joseph that Oscar Espina came to see Rita, and that Dante was about to tell him. Hearing this, the Archduke remarks that an innocent girl like Rita should not associate with a man like Oscar. So he tells the butlers, out loud, that he will ask them directly the reason for his visit. Manuel asks if Joseph is sure that Rita will tell him the truth, to which the Archduke replies that she has no reason to hide it. Manuel suggests that the reason for hiding the truth may be that Rita is enjoying a secret meeting with Oscar, and these words surprise Dante. The young butler continues saying that Madame is very beautiful if she wants to, but is interrupted by Dante, who hits Manuel. However, the young butler's words still alarm Joseph, and he thinks about it. The words and the assumption of a secret meeting compel the man to talk to Rita. At that moment, Dante scolds Manuel, telling him to watch his language and reminding him that Rita had recently already scolded Manuel. Dante thinks to himself that just thinking about this gives him a headache, and he doesn't understand why Manuel spread rumors about the situation within the Archduke's family. Looking at Manuel, Dante understands that the use of the whip already speaks of his good will towards the young butler. Dante decides to himself that Madame forgave Manuel because she loves him like her own son. Meanwhile, Rita walks down the hallway wondering if she did the right thing by giving Oscar that task. Out loud, the girl decides to trust the mercenary. Rita understands that if Oscar discovers the value of the crown, he will definitely want it for himself. Rita remembers that during the war with Ottobelli, this relic brought victory to Vespasian. Because the relic is a powerful tool for controlling people, as it transmits the will of God. Rita remembers that in the past, it was predicted that Ivonne would have half of the imperial power, and this was revealed through the goddess's crown. Rita understands that if she finds a way to destroy the relic, her daughter will not have to bear such a prediction. The girl thinks out loud that she can talk to her father about this. However, the girl's words are interrupted by Joseph, who walks towards his wife. The Archduke says he heard rumors about his wife's meeting with Oscar Espina, and the girl replies that from time to time, the mercenary carries out her instructions. Joseph tells Rita that if she has a simple errand, Dante or Manuel can do it. The girl starts getting nervous and says she doesn't want to bother the butlers with her needs. The Archduke approaches his wife and tells her that Rita must not forget that she is his wife. Joseph tells Rita that next time it will definitely depend on his family, to which the girl silently accepts that this is the kind of person he is. The heroine thinks that her husband's gaze is always full of composure and justice, and she verbally agrees with Joseph. Rita adds that she feels unsure about the assignment given to Oscar, so she warns her husband that she wants to go with him, to which Joseph asks the girl about her decision. The girl confirms, saying that she cannot wait to go to the market soon and that there is no need to worry about Oscar because he is a good guy. However, the man says he will go with his wife because no matter how you look at it, he cannot let them go together. Rita sadly realizes that she could never earn Joseph's trust, and she tells her husband out loud that she knows his decision. The heroine immediately warns her husband that the item she is looking for is for Joseph. In Carlo, sometime later, the heroes are already in a hotel next to the black market, and Rita is standing by the window looking around the street. The girl points out that the local atmosphere corresponds to the reputation of the city that never sleeps. Rita remembers that, as long as she is in this place, she will have to sleep with Joseph in the same bed. The heroine continues thinking about the situation and realizes that there is only one room left in the hotel when suddenly Oscar appears to her through the window and jokingly asks if Rita is stalking him. Rita is scared. She doesn't understand how he got here and found out that she was here too. The man wastes no time on unnecessary conversations and throws a box to Rita, telling her that he found what she asked for. The girl opens the box and finds the goddess's crown inside. The heroine realizes that the auction hasn't even started and whether she really holds the original in her hands, to which Oscar invites her to check everything herself. Rita puts on the relic and feels the magic start to work. After analyzing this, the heroine says that this is exactly what she was looking for. Oscar asks why Rita is obsessed with such things and immediately tells the girl that the crown suits her very well. The man adds that with the crown, Rita looks like a queen. Oscar says he didn't think the archduchess needed a crown, to which Rita silently understands that the man thinks she likes luxury. The heroine does not answer his words, but hands him a sheet and asks him to write down the cost of the relic, to which the man is surprised and asks if it is expensive. Rita asks if Oscar stole the crown, and the man tells her that he was a fool and didn't know that the crown was a valuable relic and expensive. Oscar adds that, above all, Rita wanted him to leave a mark by taking the relic. Rita sees the tattoo on the mercenary's hand, a rose symbolizing the Cardinal family. And at that moment, Joseph knocks on the door and asks for permission to enter. Oscar is surprised that her husband has to ask permission to enter Rita's room. The girl ignores Oscar and lets the Archduke in. The husband enters the room and asks her what she is doing and tells her that it is quite late. Joseph sees Oscar and tells him to leave because the mercenary has done his job. The man looks at the Archduke and tells him that he was just about to leave. Oscar tells the heroine's husband that perhaps he shouldn't leave due to Joseph's sudden appearance, and Rita feels an obvious tension between the men. The girl looks severely at Oscar and tells him to go back, noting that the relationship between the men is worse than she expected. Oscar leaves, and the heroine knows that in such a situation it is better to pursue him quickly, and explanations can be heard later, so now Rita asks her husband if he is done. Suddenly, the man asks his wife to call him by his name. The girl asks if her husband wants her to call him by his name, to which Joseph asks if she wants them to reveal their names at the auction. Rita, confused, agrees and starts repeating the Archduke's name over and over. The girl immediately adds that her husband's name always seemed beautiful to her, which confuses Joseph. The man notices for himself that there is a strange feeling inside him, although the girl only called him by his name. Some time later, Rita thinks about Prince Carlo, who suffers from a mental disorder, the reason why he is now locked up in the imperial family's monastery, since he did not accept the trauma received in battle. The girl thinks that she needs to cure the prince's leg, and he will recover. And after Charles's death, a medicine against the disease was developed, capable of restoring damaged nerves. The girl is still thinking when suddenly Joseph interrupts her. Suddenly, Rita feels embarrassed, to which her husband says it's quite late at night, and that it's time to go to bed. The girl lies down on the pillow, silently noting that this is the first time they have slept together. And Joseph reminds her of Dr. Nicholas's recommendation. The man lies down next to her and repeats the doctor's words that spouses need to sleep together to cure the lady's insomnia. Rita turns to her husband and tells him that she remembers what Nicholas said. Joseph looks at the girl and says that she is not familiar with magic. The girl remembers that the doctor's words were unfounded, because in the past the heroine adapted to Maria. But now, when Rita has a nightmare about losing her daughter, Rita turns her back on Joseph, thinking to herself that sleeping with him is still uncomfortable. So she says out loud that she is sensitive to the place where she sleeps, so he should not pay attention to Rita. The heroine worries to herself if she will be able to sleep. After a while, Rita falls asleep, and Joseph notices that she sleeps more deeply than he thought. A man gets out of bed thinking that he himself, unlike his wife, cannot sleep. Suddenly, the girl starts calling Ivonne in her sleep, and the man leans towards his wife to understand what is happening. Joseph realizes that Rita is only having a nightmare. The Archduke approaches his wife and touches her forehead, casting a spell. Looking at Rita, Joseph realizes that he didn't believe she was using the spell he used on Carlo. The man also remembers Dr. Nicholas's words, that visitors find it difficult to get used to the weather in Katen. Joseph understands that Nicholas's words were a reproach to the Archduke, but he could not reply, because such are his ambitions. The man looks at his wife and wonders how she would react if she found out that Joseph was the one who facilitated this marriage. The Archduke concludes that he wants to be a support for Rita. The man knows for sure that if one day Rita wants to leave and be free, he will not let her go. The next morning, Rita walks down the street and realizes that it is very quiet here in the morning. Rita remembers that Joseph wanted to go with his wife, but she refused because she had a lot of work. However, despite this, Rita was accompanied by Manuel. The heroine noticed that Manuel's behavior towards Madame had changed since the last time she scolded the young man. Rita and Manuel pass by a young woman and an old man begging. Rita looks at the old man and sees that the wrinkles on his face seem artificial and false. The heroine realizes that most likely the deceiver used a masking potion, but the unknown girl doesn't notice and overhears that the old man's grandson is sick, and he doesn't have enough money for treatment. Manuel also sees this and tells Rita not to believe the old man's words, to which the girl says that she knows there is a deceiver in front of them. Rita adds that even if he is a beggar, he is not one of her people, so her master must support the beggars here. Manuel agrees, and Rita thinks that even the young man noticed the masking potion, so it is logical that Rita won't be fooled by this. Rita looks at the unknown girl and feels that a sacred power emanates from her. The heroine believes that the girl must have understood everything from the beginning, so she turns to leave. But then she hears the stranger feeling pity for the old man. Rita hears the stranger's voice and feels it is familiar to her. The girl with sacred power takes out her wallet and is about to give money to the old man, not realizing that he is a deceiver. And at that moment, Rita recognizes the stranger as Evelina. The main character approaches the girl, who is about to give the money, and starts talking to her about the old man. Rita tells Evelina that the old man is a scammer, which surprises the girl with sacred power. The archduchess uses her magic to expose the deceiver, breaks the spell, and the old man turns into a young man. Evelina is sincerely surprised that the old man was going to trick her. The young man starts making excuses, saying that he is not an old man at all. He stands in front of Rita and Evelina and proves to them that all his words are true, to which the main character thinks he might really have grandchildren. After hearing all this, Evelina reacts calmly and replies to the scammer that it is not necessary to return the money, which surprises Rita. The archduchess explains that he is a deceiver and asks the girl with sacred power why she is trying to give him money. Evelina says that the man begged because it was difficult for him and thanks Rita for her help, declaring herself a servant of God. The girl says that everything she has is due to the merit of the goddess Laurentia, so Evelyn has a reason to help others. Rita knows that a lot can be asked from the Holy See, but the money for all needs is collected from the people. It is the so-called tax. Thus, Rita summarizes that the government itself is a scammer who takes money from the people. Meanwhile, Evelina introduces herself to Rita, who pretends not to know her name. The main character understands that Evelina wants to know her name, but Rita does not want to reveal her identity. Rita knows that it is Evelina who will become Joseph's mistress in the future. She remembers that once, Joseph was sad because of the girl, and the heroine remembers that she did not intend to interfere in their relationship because she expected the Archduke's happiness. However, Rita feels bitter inside, and Evelina replies that the girl should not thank her. To be, Rita is surprised by the girl's words and explains that the main character has the opportunity to do good thanks to Evelina. At that moment, Oscar is observing Rita and Evelina on the roof of the house, carefully following the girls' conversation. He suspects that there might be a trap for the mistress somewhere. Oscar carefully observes what is happening. He realizes that a previously captured scammer is about to escape, and he thinks about how unpleasant the situation is. Thinking about all this, the mercenary does not notice that Rita has noticed him, and now she looks at him, ordering him with her gaze not to interfere. Observing the mistress and Evelina, Oscar is surprised that she noticed him. Out loud, he jokingly asks when Rita managed to get rid of the scammer in her presence. The man looks at the girl, sees how she smiles at him, and realizes that this is just a game, and that such a smile can be dangerous. Evelina leaves and Manuel turns to Rita and tells her the best way to get to the square. While the young man explains all this to Rita, the heroine wonders why Evelina doesn't move away from them and continues to follow them. Manuel and Rita hear someone running after Evelina and shouting at her. The girl is grabbed and the criminals shout, turning to Rita but, led by the same deceiver posing as an old man, and they demand the return of the money that Rita allegedly stole. Evelina begins to dissuade the criminals, saying that the goddess Lawrence should have prevented disagreements among her subjects. Rita reacts calmly to what is happening, casts the necessary spell. The criminals, who did not expect something like this, begin to panic and call the main character a witch. Rita calmly listens to all these shouts about her. She is a little surprised by this nickname. One of the criminals addresses the scammer, previously exposed by Rita, and reproaches him for not saying earlier who the heroine was, to which Rem excuses himself by saying he knows nothing about her. Oscar, without stopping watching, sees that the archduchess is very calm and assumes that she was prepared for this. The criminals try to fight Rita's spell, but nothing helps them. One of the criminals goes to attack the girl, but she, with the help of alchemy, prevents him from doing anything. Oscar watches all this and says out loud how much he likes what is happening. At the same time, Manuel, who has been with the archduchess the whole time, runs towards her in admiration. The young butler tells Rita that he is very happy that she is his mistress. The girl calmly listens to Manuel, who continues to praise her by saying she is much better than Sabrina. Oscar, still sitting on the roof of a nearby house, listens to Manuel's words of admiration and confirms them, saying that his queen, Rita, is the most beautiful in the world. Sometime later, at night, Rita and Joseph arrive at the noisy black market, and they notice how many people there are. Rita stands next to her husband and sees from a distance that they are handing out tickets. Joseph carefully examines the surroundings in search of Oscar. The Archduke tells himself that he must be careful. Previously, Joseph interrogated Oscar about why he went to his bedroom, to which the mercenary replies that he wanted to see Rita. Oscar tells Joseph that he likes to watch the Archduchess sleep, and adds that Joseph doesn't need to threaten him because he is not even the main character's real husband. Oscar asks Joseph, who does not know that he made a deal with the girl's father, Rosco Cardinale, under the pretext of marriage. Joseph remembers that Oscar used Cardinale's temperament to advance his career, but the mercenary had not an iota of friendship or respect for Rosco. Although the Espina Guild has grown and operates throughout the continent, this does not mean that Oscar remains Cardinale's dog. However, Joseph realizes that Oscar is much better than George, who despises Carlo, who is 10 years younger than him. Out loud, the Archduke tells the mercenary that no matter what, Rita is his wife. Rita distracts Joseph from thinking that Oscar is not worthy of the main character. The girl reminds her husband that the auction is about to start, and they should hurry. Joseph agrees and places his hand on his wife's shoulder, reminding her that the auction is large, and that there may be dangerous people here, so it is better for the girl to stay close. Approaching the auction site, Rita explains to her husband that they are a baker couple, and that Joseph is a rich merchant. Taking a seat, the Archduke raises the number board and Rita, surprised, asks him to lower it. Rita supposes that Joseph is pretending to want to buy her wife an expensive gift at the auction. The girl is annoyed that the man keeps doing something she didn't plan. The heroine remembers that she finally bought him an expensive ruby necklace that has the ability to warm the body. Rita talks to Joseph and tells him that she catches cold easily, to which he replies that it is not for him. The protagonist remembers that she asked her husband to stop by Prince Carlo on the way back. The girl recalls a conversation with her husband about this and remembers how embarrassed he was, and said that his brother was not the most comfortable company. However, Rita insisted on the meeting, explaining that she would like to see His Highness's brother. And after that, Joseph sent a message to the right place. Currently, sitting at the auction, Rita looks at her husband and tries to guess what he is thinking about his brother, or about someone else. The girl knows that Evelina will also be in the imperial monastery, where Carlo is staying. Rita guesses that her husband doesn't know that Evelina is now in Knot, and meanwhile, the auction begins. The auctioneer announces a certain product that grants eternal life, and Rita becomes cautious. This product is a mermaid, a creature located in a small container. The protagonist is in shock. She doesn't understand how this is possible. The creature is very small. Rita understands that it is still a child. The starting price for a mermaid is 100,000 bluet, and many auction participants begin to offer their prices. And Rita remembers that there was a time when the slave trade was forbidden. People looked for creatures that could be sold. The heroine knows that a mermaid's tears can slow down the aging process. The girl sits in her place, nervous. Rita thinks it makes no sense for the mermaid to perpetuate a terrible life for the sake of eternal existence. And Joseph sees his wife's confusion and says that 10 million blois is an amount that can be partially returned. The heroine is surprised and thinks that her husband is talking about the fees for managing the castle, and that winter will come soon and there will be more money. Joseph touches the girl's hand and calms her down by telling her that everything will be fine. The couple offers their price of 10 million blois, and the auctioneer learns about it and intends to sell the merman for that price. The man conducting the auction is about to sell the creature to the heroine and her husband when suddenly he hears a higher price, 30 million blues. Rita hears this and starts getting nervous and angry, not understanding why someone broke the deal. An adult man, the Marquis of D'Arienzo, offers a new price of 30 million blues. Rita remembers that at this time, there was a reason why the number of superstitious people increased. The Holy Society, having the same power as the imperial family, was the envy of the nobility. The reason for this envy was that members of the Holy Society claimed that they did not age or get sick. The new owner of the merman is from Rienzo, a member of the Holy Society. Rita is surprised that someone can calmly name such a high price, and Joseph invites his wife to name a higher rate as a guarantee. Rita rejects the offer, says she needs more materials, and thinks she can no longer cause her husband more trouble. Sometime later, after the auction, Rita looks at the table and thinks about the ingredients for the sleeping pill, and orders Oscar, who is sitting next to her, to find a ballerina costume. The mercenary tells the lady that now he no longer pretends not to hear him. Suddenly, during the conversation, Oscar takes Rita's hand and pulls her close to him on the bed. Rita is surprised and asks the man what he is doing. The mercenary feigns, and as if nothing had happened, asks what is inconvenient for her. The girl moves away from the man and says that he is doing many unnecessary things at the moment. Rita's husband, Joseph, enters the room, and the girl begins to panic that he will misunderstand everything, and the man asks her if he should step aside. At first, the heroine doesn't even understand what he means. Sometime later, Joseph thinks he almost asks Rita if Oscar was her lover. The man thinks he already knew the answer to this question, because the condition for freedom of personal life was detailed in the contract between him and his wife. At that moment, Rita approaches her husband and looks at the box with the necklace next to Joseph and asks him to look at the jewelry. However, the man does not allow the girl to see the necklace. Rita says that since it is a gift, it won't hurt if he looks at it first. Joseph asks his wife if she knew about this, and the girl says that her husband said earlier that the purchase was not for him. The man secretly wonders how Rita knew the gift was for her and begins to say something, but the girl asks again if she can see the decoration. The Archduke replies negatively, and Rita thinks to herself that she got excited in advance, and Joseph doesn't want to talk about it. The girl looks at the box with the necklace. Oscar. She remembers the recent conversation in Oscar's room, and Rita realizes that she shouldn't have panicked, because Joseph had already bought a gift for Evelyn, which means that he doesn't care about her relationship with Oscar. Sometime later, Rita puts on a ballerina costume, and Joseph asks what kind of clothes this is. The wife replies that this suit is for covering up. The girl plans to approach the Marquis and save the merman. Rita is confident she can trick the Marquis because dancers cover their faces and only leave their eyes open. The heroine knows that the Marquis of de Rienzo is known for his wild lifestyle, and since he publicly revealed his identity, he most likely stayed at Lord Knott's mansion. Rita believes that the ballerina costume suits her and that the sleeping pills are also ready, because Oscar finished his job quickly. The girl looks at her husband and asks if he feels uncomfortable, hesitates about something, and denies it. Finally, Joseph asks why his wife is so worried about this merman. Rita knows that looking at the creature, she remembered many things, including the thought of Ivonne. However, out loud, Rita is not ready to tell her husband this, and the Archduke declares that he cannot let his wife go alone. The girl realizes that she is thinking about the merman's mother, who lost her son, and probably misses him. Hearing Joseph's answer, Rita tries to convince him that the Marquis is a member of the Holy Society and can recognize the Archduke, and this is dangerous. The man hands his wife a mask and tells her that this might help, and Rita is surprised. Sometime later, the undercover couple appears at the mansion gates, and Rita explains that she is the only one in the company who was late for the event. The girl also introduces Joseph to the guard as a demon hunter who can imagine the sword dance. Rita adds to herself that she shouldn't have brought her husband here at all. Joseph is by nature a polite and courteous person, and Rita wondered more than once if chivalry would be characteristic of him if he were a man. As a result, the girl relies on this, since on the way to the mansion, her husband faced men who harassed her more than once. For Rita, this was surprising. He showed himself differently than he was in ordinary life. The girl remembers with what cruelty and meanness her husband treated the evil ones with his own hands, regretting not having a sword with her. Ultimately, Rita is glad she convinced her husband to leave the weapon, because if Joseph had committed the murder not on his territory, problems would have arisen. In the mansion, Joseph takes off his mask in front of Rita and behind the spouses. Someone asks who dressed up in their walking company's clothes. Turning around, the couple sees a blonde woman who says it's the first time she's seen them both. Rita feigns and tells the girl that she is definitely tired. The main character takes out a vial of sleeping pills and says the blonde needs to sleep. The stranger began to speak and ask who Rita was, but she managed to finish speaking while falling asleep. The couple gets up and silently looks at the sleeping girl. However, Rita is plotting something and tells herself that the sleeping pill is weak, and that after a while you can wake up. Joseph, who is nearby, asks his wife to give him the antidote. However, Rita is not going to do this. She tells Joseph to rest and sleep too. The man is shocked by her words. He doesn't understand why his wife is getting rid of him at this moment. Falling asleep, the Archduke says what he needs to do. The man falls asleep, and Rita carefully lays him down, thinking that initially she didn't intend to do this. But her husband seems too much. Rita plans to use a hidden spell so that no one recognizes her husband, even if he is not wearing a mask. Rita takes Joseph's mask and remembers that once young demon hunters used that mask to protect themselves from the sun. The mask suppresses his energy, and Rita remembers how once, in the Cardinal mansion, Joseph often hid, avoiding surveillance. Rita remembers how Joseph wanted to hide what tormented his heart, but as a result, his father took the child away. Moving away from her husband, Rita thinks that many things have happened in her life. The main character covers her face with the cloth, leaving only her eyes open. The girl is ready to complete the work she has started. So before leaving, she turns to the sleeping Joseph and tells him to die while she is busy. Sometime later, Rita enters the Marquis's room. The girl notices that it took her a while to find the man's room, as he is currently drinking. So she prepares to save the merman as soon as possible and hide. While exploring the Marquis's room, Rita notices the incense that was left and is glad that she took the antidote in advance. Rita listens to what is happening in the room and hears the sound of water. The girl looks for the source of the noise and finally stumbles upon a container with water. She finds a merman that has turned into a fish and tells her friends that the creature has been here the whole time. The girl takes the container and says that now the mermaid has nothing to fear and that he is safe, without feeling at all the presence of another person behind him. The arriving Marquis turns to Rita and tells her that Danju told him about today's performance. The man approaches the heroine and tells her that he did not expect to see such a gift. Rita is a little nervous and moves away from the Marquis, who tells the girl to come closer to him. The heroine grabs the bottle and aims at the man, spraying the liquid in his eyes. Before Mark has time to do anything, they pounce on him from above and press him to the floor. Rita looks up and is surprised by the savior who has arrived. Her husband came to the girl's aid and instructed her to remain silent. Rita moves away horrified and realizes that she almost addressed Joseph by his title. The heroine begins to get up, silently not understanding how her husband can already move. Joseph turns to Rita and tells her that he already reminded her that her plan was dangerous. The girl begins to make excuses. She says she didn't want to involve her husband in all this. The protagonist draws attention to her husband's unnatural behavior and asks him what is wrong with him if he is sick. Rita approaches her husband and touches his hand, telling him that perhaps this is a side effect of the drowsy incense, to which the man invites both of them to leave. The girl doesn't know what's going on. She tells her husband that she understands his anger, but Joseph doesn't listen to her and asks her to leave him. A misunderstanding arises between the spouses. Rita begins to guess the reason for her husband's strange behavior. Joseph shouts his wife's name and scares the girl for a moment. Rita notices that the man is embarrassed and notices that he says her name for the first time. The girl finally understands what happened to her husband, so she moves away from him. The heroine asks her husband for forgiveness and suggests that the aphrodisiac is most likely to blame for everything that is happening. Joseph is ashamed and even more nervous about what happened in front of his wife. Sometime later, on the way to the imperial monastery to meet Carlo, Joseph thinks he went crazy because of what happened. The man remembers that Rita suggested that the Marquis was using a strange drug that caused such side effects. At that moment, Joseph asked his wife to stay away from him and not touch him. Now, while in the carriage, the man thinks that his wife was offended by him, while Rita feels that her husband is still ashamed of what happened. For a moment, Rita wonders how a man with such conservative views could have conceived Ivonne. The heroine remembers that she and Joseph were a couple, but even in a past life, they slept together only once. And as the girl remembers, she was very drunk, so she doesn't even remember the details. Sometime later, the couple arrives at the monastery, but they are informed that it seems Joseph's message has not yet reached the monastery, which causes Rita to be surprised. While waiting for the court to resolve what happened, Rita looks at the monastery and thinks it looks more like a prison. While the girl is thinking about this, Oscar approaches her and asks if the girl misses him. Rita asks the man if he has returned with Cardinal, to which he jokingly pretends to be upset, and asks if the heroine really doesn't need him anymore. Oscar tells Rita that he came anyway because he wanted to see the girl. Rita wonders if it ever happened that Oscar chased her like this. In the past, out of pity, Rita asked Oscar to kill George. However, the man refused, saying it was already too late and that the girl had nothing she could give the man. Currently, Oscar promises the girl that he will behave well. Rita looks at the man and notices that he always says one thing and does another. The heroine tells Oscar to hide for a while, because there is nothing good if Prince Charles notices the mercenary, to which Oscar tells the girl not to worry. The man wonders why he has been following Cardinal all this time. Oscar thought that Rita broke up with George and then married Joseph without telling him anything, so he is a little angry. Sometime later, Rita and Joseph are greeted by the monastery priest Rose Raphael. The priest says that perhaps there was an error due to which the message did not arrive on time. to which the Archduke replies that it is okay. Raphael turns to Rita and greets her too, to which the girl thinks that he probably knows who she is. Rita adds to herself that if Cardinal accepts the priest's greeting, he should have said kiss God's feet. The heroine remembers that her father is a devout Laurentian, and that the girl once considered herself a believer. However, now Rita tells the priest that she came to visit Prince Carlo and ask for his advice. Sometime later, Raphael takes the couple to Prince Carlo's chambers, and Joseph thanks him. Rita asks her husband about the priest, and he replies that Raphael looks after Carlo in the monastery all the time. Rita wonders if Carlo trusted the priest before planning to visit Katen. To herself, the girl decides that in this atmosphere of humility and decency inherent in the monastery, Raphael behaves strangely. Suddenly, a girl, Ivonne, runs up to the couple and greets Joseph like a brother. The man steps away from her in a formal greeting, to which Ivonne is surprised and tells Joseph to stop calling her holy. At that moment, Ivonne notices Rita, who has been standing nearby the whole time. The protagonist greets and introduces herself to Ivonne as Rita Katen. The girl examines Rita and realizes that she has seen the archduchess somewhere before. But Rita does not understand how Ivonne does not realize that the girl is Joseph's wife. Rita tells the saint that she is the archduke's wife, but privately she doesn't understand how it is possible that Ivonne did not find out about Joseph's marriage. The saint is embarrassed and apologizes to Rita, saying that it must be unpleasant to see another woman embracing the archduke. The girl explains to the main character that she and Joseph are like brother and sister, and Rita tells the saint that everything is fine. Ivonne tells the heroine that Rita is like a sister to her, and Rita realizes that everyone already knows that Joseph and the saint are loved. The main character thinks about the girl's age, and Ivonne asks Joseph how he met Carlo. The saint adds that Prince Charles now avoids people. Ivonne turns to Rita and tells her that the girl doesn't know, but Carlo is very shy and sensitive. The main character responds sympathetically to the girl, thinking to herself that she did not expect to see him immediately. Rita turns to her husband and suggests that he meet his brother first. However, Joseph tells his wife that he would like to go with her to see Carlo. The man adds that since Carlo is his brother, he wants to introduce his wife to him. Internally, Rita is surprised by Joseph's words because he had never said anything like that before, and agrees with her husband. Ivonne accompanies the couple to the prince's chambers, and Rita realizes that Carlo is behind the curtain. Avoiding the sunlight, the archduke's brother gets out of bed and asks what is going on here. There is a misunderstanding between the brothers about what is happening, but Joseph invites Carlo to meet Rita. The prince sees the main character behind his brother's back and tenses up, not believing that Rita Cardinal is the same sister they talked about before. The girl greets the prince, but Carlo does not seem friendly towards the girl and reproaches her for her relationship with George. The young man sharply tells Rita that he does not want to see Cardinal, so he wants her to leave. But in her head, the girl expected such a reaction. Rita remembers that when Joseph was stripped of his title of heir, his father began to pay more attention to Carlo, which caused George's ridicule and bullying towards Carlo to increase. From early childhood, Carlo, unlike Joseph, had a natural talent for learning magic. And later, the prince suffered because of George on the battlefield. That's why the girl understands the reason for Carlo's hostility towards her and Joseph. Meanwhile, he warns his brother to be careful with his language. Carlo tells Joseph that his brother didn't even warn him about marrying Cardinal, which surprises Rita. Carlo shoos the couple away, and Rita is still in shock from the prince's words. She doesn't understand if it was Carlo who convinced Joseph to marry her. All this time, the girl believed that Carlo was trying to control George by using Rita's marriage. And Joseph, the Archduke, apologizes to his wife for his brother Carlo's behavior. Looking at her husband, Rita reflects on why he married her. The girl looks at Joseph and is about to ask him her question. The man looks at his wife and nods, intending to listen to her. However, at that moment, Ivonne appears in front of the couple and says that she will try to convince Carlo to talk to Joseph again. And Rita thanks the saint, and Ivonne wonders if the couple will stay at the monastery for a while. The saint runs to the main character and tells her that she has prepared the largest room for her, and beautiful, and wants to take Rita there. Rita realizes that she had already spoken with Joseph before, but now she cannot continue the conversation. However, Rita doesn't get lost and decides to solve another issue. so she asks Evelina if she knows whether there is a sea with mermaids nearby. The saint wonders why the heroine needs the sea, and Rita shows her the rescued merman. Evelina is surprised that Rita has a real merman, and the main character realizes that Evelina recognized the creature even in the guise of a fish. The saint replies to Rita that there is a sea with mermaids near the monastery, and offers to personally release the creature. However, the main character realizes that the merman is trying to prevent Evelina from touching the boat. Therefore, Rita tells the girl that she is going to let the creature go right now and offers to go to the sea together. The saint agrees and thoughtfully says that she thought Rita was stricter. Evelina says that the creature needs to get stronger and grow. It is still too small to be released into the sea. Rita listens to the girl in surprise. She didn't want to just let the merman go into the sea. Joseph intervenes in the girl's conversation and says he will go with them. But Evelina dissuades him by saying that she wants to go alone with Rita. The saint severely states that the girls need to talk, and Rita suspects that Evelina said this specifically in front of Joseph. Sometime later, on the way to the sea, Rita thinks about what Evelina was going to tell the heroine. The main character suspects that the saint will ask the girl to leave Joseph alone. Rita believes this, even though the archduke is her husband. Evelina distracts Rita from her thoughts and tells her that they have reached the Emerald Sea, where there are mermaids. The archduchess is amazed by the beauty of the landscape, and the saint explains that the sea is so beautiful because people rarely come here. Rita understands that she can easily release the mermaid in such a calm sea because the creatures remember each other's scent. So if the mermaid is looking for her child, she will find him immediately. Rita takes out the container with the creature and Evelina asks if the heroine trusts her decision, to which the main character looks inquisitively at the girl. Evelina plays it down, saying she was just asking, and immediately adds that it would be good if Rita turned out to be what they say about her. In fact, in this case, Joseph would return to Evelina because he originally belonged to her. Rita understands how strong the connection between her husband and the saint is, but says out loud if Evelina expressed everything she wanted. Rita thinks about her feelings. She doesn't understand why she is experiencing something strange, and out loud tells Evelina to go home. The main character releases the merman into the sea, and his mother immediately finds him emerging from the water and surprising Rita with her size. The adult mermaid turns to Rita and asks if she is the savior of the little creature, and the girl confirms it. The mermaid looks at the heroine and says that even among lamentable people, there are those who deserve respect. Continuing to communicate with the main character, the mermaid looks at Evelina and warns Rita, telling her that if she were in her place, she would not get involved with the saint. Rita looks inquisitively at Evelina, and the saint asks the surprised mermaid what is wrong and why she says that. However, the creature ignores the saint. Turns back to Rita and hands her the emerald as thanks for saving her baby. Rita accepts the gift, and the mermaid explains that it is a stone with which Rita can ask the king of the sea for help. But only once. Sometime later, already in the monastery, Rita examines the gift she received from the mermaid, and she remembers that the creature didn't even explain to her how to use it. The heroine also thinks about Prince Carlo and notes that current medicine does not work effectively, but the girl knows a good but difficult recipe. Rita decides that she needs to go to the market to buy the necessary ingredients. At that moment, the girl notices a young man not far from her, who is moving slowly. Rita recognizes Prince Carlo in the young man. The heroine realizes that she hasn't seen the young man for a long time, even though he has been in the monastery for a long time. So she decides to approach and greet him. Carlo is startled by the surprise. He loses his balance and falls, but Rita doesn't have time to help him. The girl asks the young man if she can help him, since his crutch has flown far away. However, Prince Carlo cruelly and sharply rejects the girl's help. Rita does not keep ceremonies, so she agrees with his words and decides to leave. She says goodbye to Carlo, surprises the prince, and adds that she caused him trouble. Rita leaves the young man, who remained sitting on the floor in shock. Some time later, the heroine arrives at the market and wonders if it was kind to help the prince or not. In the end, Rita decides that even if she tried, it would be useless, and suddenly Oscar approaches her. Rita is scared and asks the man if he was stalking her, but he denies it and says that their meeting was a coincidence. Rita looks at Oscar and wonders what he is doing wandering around here, and the man says that the girl looks exhausted. Oscar asks if this is due to irritation from her husband's infidelity, which surprises Rita. The girl asks what it is about, and Oscar explains that he knows about the rumors circulating in the area. The girl guesses what rumors they are talking about, and realizes that the man has his own eyes and ears everywhere. Joseph and Rita live in separate rooms in the convent, and a few days after their arrival, rumors began to circulate that the Archduke and the Saint shared the same bedroom. Rita disliked hearing such rumors, no matter how loyally the aristocratic society treated infidelity, so she avoided her husband for a whole week. Although Rita is Joseph's wife in name only, she is a little surprised by his bold decision. Oscar's question distracts the main character from her thoughts. Rita is annoyed. Unexpectedly, the man asks the girl if she would like to take revenge on her husband with him. However, Rita is surprised and does not answer his proposal due to its absurdity. Instead, the girl moves away from the man and sees the sign of Merlin on the door. She remembers that Merlin is the name of an ancient alchemist and thinks the shop should sell alchemical ingredients. Oscar does not leave Rita behind and tells her to think carefully about his proposal, to which the girl replies that if he is going to talk nonsense, he should leave. Rita turns to the man and seriously tells him that she is very busy. In the alchemy shop, the girl is surprised by the wide range of products. Furthermore, the heroine notices a book on Eastern alchemy and believes she should buy it while it is available. And the seller wonders how Rita will carry all her purchases. The girl replies that everything is fine, but suddenly, someone appears behind her to collect her purchases. Rita thinks it's Oscar, so, irritated, she reminds him that she asked him not to follow her. However, upon turning around, the heroine realizes that Joseph is behind her. The man says that it has been a long time since they saw each other, and the girl nods, and the Archduke says that, not finding the girl in her room, he asked where he could find her among the parishioners. Rita hears her husband and notices that he looks tired. Joseph asks if Rita will go straight to Lowe's, but the girl tells him to leave her things because she still has work to do. However, the Archduke says that the purchases are heavy and that he will carry them. But Rita stops him. Unexpectedly, the man asks the girl if there is something that offends her. Rita turns to leave and tells him to do whatever he wants, but she herself doesn't understand what is happening to her. Leaving the shop, the heroine tells herself that she must prepare, when suddenly Oscar waits for her near the door. A man hands the main character flowers. Rita looks at the flowers and realizes that they are gladioli, and at that moment, her husband comes out of the shop behind the girl. Rita is surprised that Oscar is giving her gladioli in front of Joseph, because in secular society, these flowers mean a secret date. However, the girl accepts the bouquet, which greatly surprises Oscar, who did not expect her to react this way. However, the mercenary thinks to himself that it is for the best, so, as if nothing had happened, he tells Joseph that at first he didn't notice him. Oscar adds that he hopes the Archduke doesn't mind his gesture towards Rita, but Joseph seems tense. After a while, Prince Carlo and Joseph are talking, and Carlo asks the Archduke what is wrong with him. Why does he look so tired? Carlo continues by saying that Raphael was right about the damage, because upon arrival, Joseph immediately went to meet the execution squad to kill the monsters. Carlos wonders if the Archduke didn't return earlier than usual, as the house usually lasts about 15 days. Unexpectedly, Carlos realizes that this might be related to Rita, and he looks at his brother in shock, realizing that the main character did not react in any way to the rumors about Joseph and Evelina, and maybe the brother is unrequitedly in love with Rita. Out loud, the prince tells Joseph to keep this feeling inside. The Archduke doesn't understand what his brother is talking about, and Carlo replies that his wife is Cardinal, and anyway, she is just a southerner. Carlo starts telling his brother how Rita behaved when she fell, but he realizes that Joseph is not listening to him, and at that moment the Archduke is thinking about Rita and his encounter with Oscar. The mercenary gave the heroine 12 flowers, which means a meeting at midnight, which means the date should happen soon. They became nervous. The man gets up from his seat and Carlo asks what is wrong, but the Archduke does not answer. Carlo stops his brother, telling him that Joseph's bedroom won't be ready until tomorrow and, in general, where he will spend the night. Leaving Carlo, Joseph, irritated, says he is going for a walk. At this moment, Rita finds herself in a difficult situation, remembering that when she saw Joseph, she immediately remembered the rumor that had spread. However, the girl decides for herself that her husband doesn't care what she does. Rita decides that she has no reason to be angry, when suddenly she hears a knock on the door. The heroine thinks Oscar has already come to see her, but she thinks about it, doubting that Oscar has been knocking on the door for so long. Suddenly, the heroine hears Joseph's voice outside the door. Rita approaches, opens the door for her husband, and asks what he is doing here. The girl begins to ask what could have happened in Katana, when suddenly, the man holds out his hands to her. Joseph pulls the surprised Rita towards him. The girl asks her husband what is wrong with him. He looks at the room and sees that there is no one inside. Rita draws her husband's attention by addressing him. The protagonist gets embarrassed and asks her husband to close his eyes for a while. After a while, the girl asks her husband, completely embarrassed, to open his eyes again. And Rita realizes that, on the contrary, she calmed down upon seeing her embarrassed husband. Joseph sits down on a chair and asks his wife for forgiveness. Rita smiles and tells him not to apologize, because it is also her fault. The girl asks Joseph what brought him to her so late, and feared that something had happened in Katana. The man replies that he couldn't sleep from anxiety, and Rita asks him about it. Joseph looks at his wife and tells her that she seems to be trying to interfere in his personal life. Rita at first doesn't understand what he's talking about, not noticing that a huge monster is flying towards them from outside. Finally, realizing the monster, Joseph stands in front of Rita to protect her. And the girl silently doesn't understand where they are coming from. Rita thinks about it, because Evelina's divine powers should protect the monastery, and she tells her husband that she is using magic now. However, Joseph stops her and tells her that the monsters are hypnotized, so she needs to run to the hallway. Rita looks at her husband, and he adds that as soon as he deals with them, he will be honest with her. The heroine runs away and tells herself to call the knights to help her husband, and thinks that monsters rarely attack buildings like this. Looking out the window, the girl realizes that the monsters are moving too unnaturally. Rita gets scared realizing that all the monsters are heading towards the annex, and if she doesn't react, Joseph will be in danger. The girl runs to the knights and explains the situation, but they hesitate whether they should intervene if the monsters are only attacking the annex. The heroine is angry and shocked by the reaction to her words, and one of the knights says he heard that the archduke was staying in the annex. Rita tells the knights to hurry up, because Prince Carlo and Evelina are inside the building. At that moment, the knights tense up and do not believe that there is a saint inside the annex. Only after this news do the knights make up their minds and head to the annex. Rita sadly realizes that the knights are ready to save only Evelina. So from the beginning, it was necessary to say that she was in danger. Soon the knights rush to the annex where the saint is and ask her if she is okay. The main character is nervous about Joseph, and Evelina replies that she is fine. The saint adds that the archduke protected her. The knights go to help Joseph, and Rita is silently happy that everything is fine with her husband. However, the main character realizes that the monsters are avoiding Evelina. Rita begins to understand what is happening, so she shouts at Evelina to stop the monsters. But the saint does not understand what she is talking about. The main character grabs the girl and explains that she controls the monsters, and that she must stop. Evelina pretends and says there is no way she can do this. At this moment, the knights cannot cope with the attacking monsters, so they shout to the saint to run to a safe place. Rita understands to herself that most knights have not fought against such creatures before, so if nothing is done, there will be more casualties. The girl grabs Evelina again, but she continues to pretend that she understands nothing, and Rita privately reproaches the saint for her pretense. A moment later, the protagonist decides that she has no choice but to force the saint to weaken her influence over the monsters. Rita pushes Evelina, surprised, and she does not understand why she is doing this. The knights see what is happening and are about to run to the saint's aid, but Rita stops them and tells them to stop and see what happens next. Everyone present sees that the monsters are not attacking Evelina. The knights are surprised and do not understand what is happening, and at that moment, Rita thinks that the monsters have slowed down, and they are waiting for something. Therefore, the main character concludes that the saint is a tamer. Rita thinks it surprising that the saint has the ability to control demons. Meanwhile, Evelina gets angry and shouts at the knights, ordering them to save her from the witch Rita. The main character understands that it was with this ability that the saint dominated the dragon in the past, and Rita tells herself that she expected such a reaction from Evelina. Evelina is the only saint of the species, and Rita, due to her use of alchemy, received the nickname of the Cardinal Witch. The girl understands that if the saint declares that Rita manipulated the demons to frame her, then in this case, the main character will not be able to avoid the severe punishment of the throne and of the emperor, so Rita approaches Evelina. To avoid trouble, Rita apologizes to the saint. At first, Evelina is surprised, but the main character continues saying that the saint saved everyone, and Rita never doubted her faith in God. Addressing the knights, Rita tells them that the monsters did not touch the saint. And what could this be other than the will of God? Rita cannot deny that Evelina is a saint who stopped evil with her faith. The knights agree with Rita's words and confirm that this is exactly the will of God. Bowing over the surprised saint, Rita smiles and says that everything is by the grace of God. Evelina completely agrees with the heroine and says that most likely God wanted to protect her. The saint adds that Rita must have had strong faith, since she knew how to recognize the will of God before Evelina. Sometime later, Rita watches as the bodies of the monsters are taken from the monastery, and at that moment, Joseph runs to her and asks if she is injured. The man says he was surprised when he saw Rita suddenly run towards the saint. The girl replies out loud that she is fine, but internally she is surprised that the archduke came to her, and not to Evelina. Joseph gives his wife a cape, and a knight approaches the couple and asks if Joseph knows a way to dispose of the monster corpses. The archduke replies that in Katana they usually burn them, but at that moment, Rita intervenes in the conversation. The girl orders all the bodies to be collected. Rita's daughters tell her husband a way to purify the blood of the monsters. Even in Katana, where there are many monsters, they use their different body parts as byproducts of the dead demons. However, the devil's blood is considered the most expensive because such blood can be used as raw material to enhance magic. Rita explains that she uses alchemy because she doesn't have tools, and with the purifier, even a normal person can purify blood. And she asks her husband if he can feel mana. Hearing his wife's words, Joseph says it is excellent technology. The girl realizes that she planned to install the purifier in Katana, but that it will not be necessary there now. In the past, Rita spent a lot of time studying the purification method, and on this, the girl's father made huge profits from the medicines made from the blood of the devil that the heroine purified. However, Rita notes that in the past, she did not pay attention to this, as she was blinded by her love for George. So now she can change the present that is in her hands. The protagonist tells her husband that she is going to patent and sell the refiner she developed, but that she will not share the basis of the method and the formula. Joseph agrees with his wife and tells her that this is the result of her hard work. But Rita replies that she will tell her husband everything. The girl continues by saying that this way she will help the well-being of Katen, and he will not have to worry about finances in the future. Rita understands that Joseph will also be happy if Katen becomes a rich territory. But suddenly, the man asks why Rita wants to tell him everything. He maintains that since his wife knows the cleaning method, it makes no sense for him to go into all the details. The girl replies that when she is not present, Joseph will be in a difficult situation, and the man asks if the heroine has finally decided to leave Katen. After a while, the girl remembers this conversation and does not understand if the court really does not want her to leave. Rita remembers the rumors about her husband that were in the monastery and doubts that they are true. The girl seriously wonders if there really is something between Joseph and Evelina. In the end, Rita reminds herself that she must not forget what she has to do. The heroine's main goal is to successfully leave Katen for a happy life for her unborn child. The next day, Rita goes to Prince Carlo. The young man is surprised and nervously tells the heroine how she can burst in on him like that, forgetting all the rules of decency. Rita approaches the window, and at that moment, Carlo says that this is why Cardinale cannot be trusted. The young man realizes what the girl is about to do. Panicked, Carlo shouts at the main character not to open the curtains, but the girl does not listen to him. Rita says that staying in so much darkness is harmful to health, but Carlo does not listen to the heroine and hides under the blanket, shouting at Rita. The girl sits on Carlo's bed and asks him if he is afraid of the sunlight, which is strange because the goddess Lawrence loves the sun. The girl realizes that this is very strange because Carlo has strong enough faith to trust the monastery. The prince gets up and replies that it is a curse. Rita is surprised and Carlo repeats that, due to the devil's curse, he cannot use his legs. Finally, coming out from under the blanket, the prince adds that his brother Joseph also suffers from this. Rita wonders who says that. The girl adds that myths about demon hunters are often spread, and this may be true, but she doesn't believe it. Carlo objects, saying that he saw a demon and that the leg hurts more than usual in the sun. The girl asks what the prince received in return, since this is a curse, but he, doubtfully, replies that it was Raphael who said Carlo was cursed. Rita doubtfully asks Carlo about Raphael. The Laspetians have long depended on divine power, and other people cannot recognize the abilities of demons and defeat them, but for Rose the priest, this is not a problem. Carlo claims that Raphael helped him because the prince was in so much pain that he couldn't even move. Rita tells the young man to calm down and uses alchemy, which surprises Carlo. The girl magically binds the prince, and he tells her to stop immediately. Carlo looks out the window suspiciously and says he shouldn't expose himself to the sun. But Rita seems calm and firmly rejects the prince's request. The young man is surprised, and the girl asks Carlo if anything hurts him now. The prince wonders why his leg doesn't hurt in the sun, and Rita asks if Raphael wasn't with Carlo the whole time. The young man understands what the heroine is talking about, and she replies that perhaps they sent Raphael with Prince George. Rita continues speculating, suggesting that the priest used magic every time Carlo was in the sun, and concludes that George is quite resourceful to have the priest on his side. The girl suggests that maybe George is just using people because he is very good, and Carlo speculates that George is simply using Raphael to deceive the prince. Rita invites Carlo to think it over carefully, because if the prince is sick, then why doesn't the priest help him? Because that is his task. The girl adds that she is going to help Carlo. She will try to cure his leg. The heroine's words sincerely surprise the prince. Carlo tells Rita not to talk nonsense. He adds that he has already accepted that his life is over. And the girl thinks to herself that she didn't expect to hear a thank you from him. The prince adds that he doesn't care if he has 2 legs. Carlo says there is no way he can defeat George, and Rita is surprised by his words. The young man asks the girl to leave him because he wants to end this life as quickly as possible. Hearing these words, Rita gets angry and slaps Carlo. She doesn't believe his words and tells him to think about the imperial dynasty and asks him if he thought about who would stay with her if the prince dies. Rita explains that George was chosen by the Holy Office and that if he ascends to the throne, he will dismiss many people. The girl adds that this will happen because George hates the Angelo's dynasty. Carlo is sincerely surprised by her words, and the heroine asks the young man if he really didn't know that. Due to the fact that George is illegitimate, he feels this imperial blood within himself. That's why, as soon as he ascends to the throne, he will displace the entire Angelo's dynasty and create his own empire. So, his sword will pierce deep into the heart of the species and kill Rita and Joseph along with his unborn child. Having finished the explanation, Rita asks Carlo for forgiveness, but adds that she does not break her word, and warns Carlo to gather courage. The young man looks at the girl, listening carefully to her words. Rita says she wants to re-examine the prince's leg, but the young man asks how he can trust George's close associate and why Rita is doing all this. The heroine replies that her goal is to remove George from his post, make him look like a fool, and make him suffer. Carlo is surprised at first, but then agrees with the girl. The young man gets up and demands that Rita prove that Raphael is George's man, and gives Rita a week to do it. Carlo sets the condition that if Rita's medicine does not help him within a week, she will replace it with holy power, to which the girl privately considers him a reckless person. Rita accepts these conditions and silently notes that she will not have to use holy power because it is not poison. After a while, Rita forces the prince to take her medicine. Carlos is surprised and asks why he still feels so much pain. The heroine explains that this is normal because the leg has started to recover, but the prince says the potion is disgusting. Rita realizes that the young man is behaving like a child. The heroine knows that for Carlos's medicine to be effective, it must be taken at the same time. The girl remembers that she watched Carlo for several days and noticed something. Rita pointed out that the prince is one of those people who do not give up. Carlo only gave up when he heard his brother, and loudly told the young man that it would be possible to cure his leg in a week. Ivonne, who is in the prince's room, asks if the medicine will really help. Why does she see how much the prince is suffering? The saint says she must tell the priest about this, but Rita stops her, saying she warned her not to trust Raphael. The heroine remembers that the priest said Carlo has a curse, so now he cannot help. Ivonne addresses the prince and asks him if he is sure that he needs to take the medicine. to which Carlo replies that he considers it the only option. The saint is shocked by the prince's words. She did not expect him to answer like that. Rita is about to give Carlo a vial of medicine, but the saint snatches it from the girl's hands. The main character is surprised and asks Evelina what she is doing. The saint looks at the main character and tells her that she does not believe her. Evelina adds that Carlo does not need to drink this medicine, and if it is not poison, Rita should drink it herself. Rita listens to the saint's words with regret. The heroine understands that this is due to the fact that she is cardinal, but she does not like that they constantly suspect something. Rita is ready to take the medicine and already reaches out to take it, when suddenly someone appears. Joseph, the heroine's husband, takes the test tube from Evelina's hands. The girl is surprised that the Archduke managed to enter the room unnoticed. Joseph silently drinks the medicine from the test tube, and Evelina begins to get nervous. The saint does not calm down and says that Joseph may die from this medicine. However, the man calms the girl by telling her that he is fine. Then the Archduke looks threateningly at Evelina and tells her that he hopes she no longer doubts his wife. Rita silently observes what is happening without entering into conversation. Suddenly, Rita feels strange because before her husband did not suspect anyone recklessly. Evelina begins to make excuses, saying that she is simply worried about the prince. But Joseph replies that he will no longer tolerate disrespect towards his wife from the saint. The Archduke's words trap the saint, and she falls silent. Angry with the man, Evelina leaves Carlo's room. Rita notices that the saint is very angry and asks Joseph if he will follow her. The man replies that the girl needs time to calm down. Joseph tells Rita not to worry and thanks Prince Carlo for his help. Rita is happy and sincerely thanks her husband for believing in her. Joseph falls silent and looks at his wife in surprise. Some time later, Joseph examines the necklace he was going to give Rita in the morning. However, he did not succeed, because in the morning he only took Carlo's medicine. The man remembers how his brother was surprised that he hadn't given the girl a gift yet. Joseph recalls that he had never given anything to anyone before, because he had lived alone since he was overthrown. That's why the Archduke is nervous. After a while, he arrives at Rita's room and asks permission to enter. However, the wife does not respond, and Joseph is surprised because it is too early, and it is unlikely that she can sleep. Suddenly, the man has an unpleasant feeling and suddenly opens the door. Joseph is startled and thinks there has been another monster attack. However, upon entering the room, the Archduke discovers that everything is silent, and there is no one inside except the girl. Rita lies peacefully without reacting to her husband. Joseph is surprised. He did not expect his wife to fall asleep so early. Immediately, the man notices a bottle of alcohol next to the bed. Joseph decides that he needs to put his wife to bed first. However, at that moment the girl opens her eyes and sees her husband. Joseph is surprised to see that the girl is not actually sleeping. She gets up and greets her husband. Observing Rita's behavior, Joseph realizes that his wife is drunk. Suddenly, Rita says she likes it very much, and her husband doesn't understand what she is talking about. The girl smiles and says she likes that someone believes in her and trusts her. Suddenly, Rita adds that this is not for Joseph, and the man again does not understand his wife. The girl explains that her husband does not entrust everything to Joseph and is afraid of being deceived. Rita holds out her hands to her husband and tells him what's the point of increasing his fortune, because in the end they could steal it. Holding the man by the cheeks, the girl says that she cannot leave peacefully because she is worried about Joseph. Approaching her husband, Joseph suddenly wonders if he had ever seen his wife's eyes so closely, and observes that they are very beautiful. Suddenly, Rita leans down and tells her husband that she wants to sleep. Joseph calls the girl, but she does not answer. Rita fell asleep on her husband's shoulder, so she doesn't hear anything. Joseph carefully lays his wife down. Rita is fast asleep, so she doesn't react at all. Looking at the girl, Joseph regretfully realizes that next time he will have to return the necklace to her. The man thinks to himself that Rita wants to leave Katen as soon as possible, so maybe she won't even like that gift. Joseph says out loud that his wife could be seriously injured. The man gently touches the forehead of the sleeping girl. The Archduke notes that he wants Rita to stay with him a little longer. At this moment, Evelina scolds her maid, and for the fact that she did not come to apologize to her. The saint swears, saying that this marriage was fictitious, and life with Joseph makes Rita unhappy. Evelina is furious with Rita and remembers that she promised not to marry Joseph. After all, initially she was supposed to get engaged to Evelina, but the girl thinks the Archduke might be offended because she became a saint. The saint wonders if Joseph suffered because of this. Evelina doesn't understand who would want to spend their whole life in the north, and says out loud that instead she wanted to propose to a man who would protect her all her life like a saint. Evelina accuses Rita of being her boyfriend's squad, and the maid asks the saint to calm down, because she has good news for her. Evelina calms down and asks the maid what is wrong, and she replies that Joseph bought a ruby necklace. Evelina says that these are her favorite stones, and the maid adds that she heard the necklace is in the bedroom, to then give it to her beloved. The maid remembers that there will soon be a big ball, and that the necklace is not a gift. Evelina cheers her up and says she wants to look at this necklace herself. Sometime later, the saint sneaks into Joseph's room, surprised that he is not there. Examining the room, Evelina sees a box with ornaments. The girl approaches and takes the gift in her hands, believing that nothing bad will happen if she looks at the jewels, which she already considers hers. Upon opening the box, she is greeted by the beauty of the decoration. The ruby necklace shines brightly, and Evelina notices that the maid Marta was right. The saint thinks to herself that looking at the necklace herself was a great idea. It is very beautiful. After trying on the jewelry, the girl confidently says that this means Joseph loves her. Having taken the necklace, Evelina thinks she really wants to see Rita's reaction when she sees the decoration at the ball. The saint thinks that since this is a gift for her, nothing bad will happen if she takes it beforehand. Sometime later, Rita arrives at the ball. The heroine is amazed by the beauty of the event and is surprised that Rose organized everything. The girl does not understand who, in their right mind, would organize such a celebration in a monastery, and she looks at the wine glass, realizing that it is very hard to find. Priest Raphael approaches Rita and tells her that the saint took care of such expensive wine. Because such balls are not held every day, the girl learns of rumors that the archduchess is not happy that commoners have the opportunity to taste such expensive wine. Rita remembers that the priest became colder towards the girl, and Carlo, when he felt better, started avoiding Raphael. While Carlo was being treated, Rita and Joseph took care of him instead of Raphael. Rita wonders if the priest has become more aggressive and replies out loud that there was no payment, and that it's strange that the royal family still supports him. Unexpectedly for Raphael, Rita becomes interested in who keeps the monastery's notes. The priest replies that he doesn't know. Different people take notes, but the heroine privately does not believe the man's words. In the end, Raphael says that Rita is too interested in the monastery's affairs, so now he wants to retire to take advantage of today's ball. Looking at the departing priest, the girl is surprised. She didn't think he would behave so suspiciously. Suddenly, the heroine wonders if it is a coincidence that both the saint and the priest are present at the ball, hurting Carlo. At this moment, the people in the hall are gossiping about the main character. People notice that Rita is alone without her husband and assume that the couple's relationship is bad. But the girl knows that her husband will come later because he is sitting with Carlo. The girl realizes that apparently not everything is going well for her when suddenly they approach her. Oscar leans towards the heroine and asks if she is done talking. The man adds that he really wanted to see the queen today and is very happy to have come. Rita looks at Oscar and thinks to herself that every time she doesn't know what she should do next to him. She remembers that the man used to be by her side and then moved away to relieve the tension. He, being the head of the Assassins' Guild, is surprisingly well-versed in secular ethics. Rita tells Oscar that he is on time, as she was going to explore this monastery. The girl asks the man to focus on Raphael. She needs to know something about him. The man wonders if Rita will find out everything on an empty stomach and adds that, in any case, he is richer than her. And the heroine replies that if she could get the magic stone's insert, then everything would be very different. The heroine asks him what he needs from her, and the man approaches the girl and tells her that it's just a favor. Rita agrees and stops bothering him with questions, but then directs her attention to Oscar's face. She touches the man's cheek and asks him if he is injured. The man is not lost and replies that he is surprised by the heroine's experience. And the girl wonders what happened to his mood. Oscar continues to flirt with Rita and tells her that everything is fine, only that he is confused by the heroine's beauty. Rita explains that Rona worked hard on this dress, and Rita bought it for some unknown reason when she went to see Rose. The girl adds that she doesn't know why she bought it, but Rona will be happy if she hears that she liked it. But Oscar tells the girl that it's not about the dress at all. And she, embarrassed, tells him to bring her wine. Rita watches the man when he leaves and notices that he still tries to stay with her at every opportunity. At that moment, Evelina enters the hall. Everyone present begins to whisper about the saint, saying that she has finally arrived, and many begin to congratulate her. The protagonist looks at the arrived saint and is surprised by her outfit. Rita realizes that Evelina is very beautiful today. At that moment, the girl notices a necklace on the saint's neck and tells herself that she never thought she would see this jewelry in public. Satisfied with herself, Evelina asks Rita how she looks and adds that she ordered her dress especially for the ball, and that only she has it. The saint also deliberately says that her dress matches the necklace that Joseph put around her neck. Rita looks at Evelina and tries to remain calm, because from the beginning, she understood that all this was Evelina's plan. The saint turns to Rita because she is not reacting and is not speaking to the girl. At that moment, Joseph enters the hall, and the first thing he does is greet Rita. The protagonist sees how her husband transforms for the ball and does not understand why her heart beats so fast. The girl realizes with horror that she had promised to wish him happiness in this life, but now she is jealous. At that moment, Oscar approaches the girl with a glass of wine and calls her. The mercenary notices that Joseph has arrived and is annoyed by this, so he turns away to bring more wine. However, the protagonist does not allow him to do this. She takes the man by the hand and leads him out of the room in front of her husband. Joseph stares at the departing couple, not understanding his wife's behavior. At that moment, Oscar asks Rita what happened. The girl falls silent. She herself does not understand what she is doing, because she knows what it means to be possessed by a person. Rita perfectly understands that the desire to possess someone is not the same as love. Instead of love, it is simply the desire to lure the other person into a trap. The heroine replies to Oscar that she does not want to say what is wrong with her, to which he asks what the problem is then. Rita tells the man to forget everything and adds that he shouldn't think about it. However, Oscar feels tense from these words, remains silent, and Rita wonders what is wrong. The man says he doesn't know himself, that he is simply in that mood. Moreover, the queen's cheeks blushed. Oscar approaches the heroine and adds that this is what bothers him most today. Rita does not understand what is wrong with the man, so she asks him to leave. At that moment, Joseph finds the couple and Rita hears his voice. The Archduke addresses them, saying that there are many eyes here. Rita looks at her husband and is surprised that he came here because of her, and Joseph continues saying that this is not the best place for a date. The girl replies that this is not at all what he thought, and the Archduke wonders what is going on then. Rita is confused because she does not want to scold her husband for giving the necklace to Evelina. However, the king's palace servants did not stop the saint, although they knew that the jewelry was bought by Joseph. Rita is about to leave and says she is a little tired today. However, the man stops her by telling her that he never signed the contract that Rita gave him. The girl stops and silently looks at her husband. Rita remembers that at that moment, she did not understand what the words spoken by Joseph meant. Sometime later, alone, the Archduke looks at the ruby necklace in his hands. He sadly realizes that Evelina most likely took it. At that moment, the saint burst into the man's room and reproached him for not greeting her, because no one had forgotten that she was the only one by Carlo's side when he was agonizing. The man is surprised by such harsh words from the saint. Joseph asks the girl where she got the necklace from, and Evelina replies that she thought it was a gift he had given her. Hearing this, the Archduke coldly replied to the girl that this decoration was not intended for her. Evelina does not believe his words and does not believe that it was for Rita, and adds that the man's affection for the main character is great. Evelina begins to get angry and says that Joseph himself saw Rita standing on the balcony with her lover. Joseph also begins to get angry and severely tells the saint to shut up. The man's words surprise Evelina. The man adds that he does not want to offend the saint because she helped Carlo when he was suffering, but he demands that Evelina return the necklace. Now, reflecting on what happened, Joseph realizes that he misunderstood Rita. He remembers how his wife told him that what was happening on the balcony was not what he was talking about. The Archduke clenches his fists nervously. The man keeps thinking only of his wife and what happened. After a while, Carlo shows Rita that he can now walk on his own 2 feet. The young man is sincerely happy to be able to walk, and the girl is also secretly happy for the prince's success. Suddenly, the heroine wonders if she should tell Joseph about this. A month has passed since the ball, and the protagonist has been avoiding her husband all this time. Carlo brings the heroine out of her thoughts and asks if she can pick up the sword again. Rita confirms, saying that the young man can claim the throne, reminding him that only Carlo can stop George's tyranny. The young man adds that he knows he must return to the palace as soon as possible to prove to the nobles that he is alive and completely healthy. Carlo says that these people nominated George as emperor, and he had an advantage because Carlo had leg problems. Hearing this, the heroine is silently happy that the prince now has motivation. In the end, the young man thanks Rita and tells her that everything turned out well thanks to her. The girl smiles sincerely and warmly at the prince, realizing that the time has come to show the people that everything has changed. Some time later, Joseph arrives at Rita's office and tells her that he came to thank her. He adds that he understands that his wife really does not want to see him. Rita confirms to herself that, as she thought, Joseph noticed that she was avoiding him. But nothing can be done. The heroine points out that every time she looks at Joseph's face, she notices his beauty, and even now she admires his beauty, and tells herself that she must stop looking at him. Joseph says that Rita is still angry with him, and apologizes for his hasty comments about the relationship between his wife and Sabrina. Rita says that everything is fine, and adds that it was reckless of her to take someone from the order with her. The heroine thinks to herself that all this time she was worried about one thing, finding the opportunity to leave here as soon as possible. Joseph sees the girl taking care of her own business and asks if she is very busy. Rita realizes that in front of her are documents sent by Oscar and tells her husband that she will soon leave Rose. Therefore, she needs to do a lot. She realizes that she does not want to cause unnecessary worries here. Remembering the past, Angelo's Juan Baile, Holy Knight of the Throne, he was able to get a lot of help from the church. The heroine's father provided great help after eliminating the tyrant Hurius, a dark mage. Because of this, Rosco had close ties with the Holy See, the temple, and the church. Their relations were so good that Spezian came to be called the Holy Country. Rita understands that such a waste is simply ridiculous. The heroine is not surprised that they lead such a magnificent life for the monastery. Out loud, Rita continues saying that the monastery did not divert taxes that should have gone to the imperial treasury, under the pretext of managing the religious affairs of the Holy See. At that moment, Oscar appears to the girl and sits at the table, which outrages the heroine. Oscar says that he behaves this way because of the girl's coldness, and reproaches her that for some time she did not allow him to get close to her at all. Rita tells the young man to stop talking nonsense, and warns him that she will get very angry if he behaves the same way as at the ball. Rita says that first they need to find evidence that Raphael was embezzling, and Oscar says that he doesn't believe that he can easily find someone from whom to extract information. The man says that the priest manages the taxes in Rose's area, but it seems the entire monastery was using stolen funds. Oscar continues saying that it would have been better if Raphael had hidden the money from everyone, but instead he converted everything into donations and handed it over to the monastery's funds. Rita says that it looked like you were donating money to a private property, and agrees that it is not just about manipulating tax records. The girl wondered why the documents contained information about the imperial bank, if the tax was laundered through the bank as a donation to the monastery. Oscar replies that those who squandered money with Raphael will never open their mouths, but the girl says she knows how to solve this problem. The man asks if the heroine is going to increase her workload. The girl confirms and says that it is a very good opportunity. Rita thinks that if they use the imperial bank to launder money, that means the bank also knew about Raphael's embezzlement. And since this is the only bank in this empire, the owner of this bank is the heroine's father, Rosco Cardinale. The girl realizes that if everything goes well, she will have an excellent opportunity to bring her father to clean water. The girl tells Oscar that, first of all, she needs information about the manager of the smallest branch. And besides, the heroine gives money to the mercenary, which surprises the man greatly. And Rita warns him to be careful. The girl says she cannot give a large amount at once, but she can give it in cash over a year. The heroine thinks to herself that if she sold the mana stones at a high price, she could earn about $1 million. And Oscar asks if Rita is giving him money in exchange for information. The man returns the envelope with the money to the heroine and tells her that he does not need it, which surprises the girl. Oscar explains that he is not helping her with money. He adds that he thought Rita had figured it out a long time ago. But Rita looks surprised. Oscar changes the subject and says that he will immediately send information about the manager. Since he expected such a request, he found out everything in advance. Rita stops the man and again asks him why he is helping her, because it goes against her father's will. Oscar turns to the girl and tells her that she is smart. He adds, let Rita think about everything herself and guess what he is talking about. When Oscar leaves, Rita thinks about his words but cannot guess what he meant. Therefore, the heroine decides that she still has things to do and that she needs to think a lot. After a while, Rita secretly meets Rona. The archduchess tells the maid that she asked her to find the quietest place to meet Sir Hans. Rona led the mistress to the prison, where a tied man awaited them. The maid explains that this is why she chose the prison, so that unnecessary sounds would not leak out. But Rita feels that the girl misunderstood her. Rita thinks that Rona told her that they took the manager to the Rose branch, but did not mention that they placed him in the basement instead of the reception area. The maid asks Rita if she needs to bring a chair to punish him, to which the main character thinks that the girl is just a striving girl. Rita approaches the prisoner, thinking that he is already dead from fear. Approaching the man, the girl thinks that this will be even better. The prisoner lifts his head and looks in front of him and realizes with horror who she is. The girl smiles and says that it seems he, Sir Baranjo, remembered her face. The man really doesn't understand what is happening and reminds Rita that he is a man working for Cardinal. The girl asks the prisoner if he knows the new priest Raphael. The man, horrified, asks if she is here because of this case. Rita reacts instantly to his words and listens carefully to what he says next. Varancho continues to say that the girl should let him go right now and that all of Rose's bribes were for the account. Rita asks what kind of bribes they are talking about, and the man replies that they are talking about money to turn a blind eye to the waste of taxes. Rita asks if it is true that the so-called taxes long ago ended up in her father's pocket. The girl realizes that she didn't even need to beat Varanjo into a confession due to his talkativeness. The main character tells Rona that she is going to transfer the case of embezzlement by priest Raphael to the imperial court. Varanjo, in shock, asks Rita if she understands that her actions will cause great harm to her father. But the heroine confirms that she understands everything. The girl also adds that this is why she feels great. The man does not expect such words at all, so he tells the girl that she is just a witch. Varanjo continues to protest and says that Rita has no proof and that she will not act as a witness in the trial. He knows that he gave all the bribes he accepted to turn a blind eye to tax evasion to the count. After listening to Varanjo's speech to the end, Rita says that she is called a witch for a reason, and takes out the recording artifact that was with her the whole time. Rita remembers a hostile state, the Motto Empire, where the artifact was intended solely for her use in Odebelli. The girl asks Baranjo if he really thought the girl would come unprepared. Shortly after finding the information she needed, Rita returned to Katen from Rose. The girl began to actively look for the best place to sell mana stones, so she decided to resort to the second most powerful family in Spezian. After the cardinal surname and arranging a meeting with the main Lopez, Marchioness Lopez, the Marchioness arrived at the meeting and Rita had tea with her. Unexpectedly, Lopez asks the main character why she married the Archduke. Rita feels embarrassed and surprised by the question, and the redhead Marchioness jokingly suggests that it might be because of her beautiful face. Lopez adds that the Archduke is known for his good looks, even among enemy soldiers. Rita remembers that when Joseph led the Western Army as commander-in-chief, Lopez was a soldier who commanded a platoon under his command. Rita falls silent and sips her drink, thinking about the Marchioness. The redhead says her name is Genia, and privately Rita considers her an unusual person. The main character asks if the reason the young woman married the Archduke is information necessary to close their deal. To which the Marchioness replies that this is very important, because she needs to know who her business partner is. Surprisingly, Genia says that the foolish nickname of Cardinal Witch does not reflect the whole truth about the heroine. Rita thinks the Marchioness is a good person, and replies that if the redhead is very curious, then the heroine will answer. Rita replies that she really married her husband when she saw his beautiful face, and she doesn't realize that Dante is behind her. Suddenly, the girl realizes that someone is behind her, and horrified, she realizes that it is the butler and begins to panic. But the man, as if nothing had happened, replies that he brought Joseph, as the main character asked him to. The Archduke approaches the girls and tells his wife that they informed him that the girl wants to tell him something. Rita recovers and tells her husband that she needs his approval to trade with Lopez. Rita approaches Joseph and tells him that she would like her husband to read the contract too. The man reads the document and suddenly turns to the Marchioness. Joseph seriously says that there seems to be an error in the contract. Genia and Rita do not understand what they are talking about, and the main character takes the document to read it again. The heroine rereads the contract and confirms that the price was set without taking into account the difference between eau de belly and Spezian. Rita remembers that the Marchioness smuggled from a country where trade was prohibited to increase her wealth, and she wanted to get the maximum profit. So the heroine understands that she needed to study the girl before calling her husband. Joseph replies that if this is not a mistake, then he sees no point in dealing with an outburst who does not know the true price of mana stones. Joseph says that trading with eau de belly involves many risks, but that does not mean there isn't a mountain to climb. The man looks threateningly at the Marchioness and tells her how she dares to try to cheat his wife, to which the Marchioness thinks with horror that it seemed to her that her heart skipped a beat. Rita sees the girl's fear and wants to change the subject, so she says she heard the Marchioness was interested in potions, and adds that she is sorry, but she thinks the terms of the contract are not suitable for her. Genia rushes to stop the main character and adds that most likely there was some kind of miscalculation. The Marchioness tells the couple that she will change the terms of the deal as an apology. Shortly after, Jenny signed a contract and, of course, lowered the terms of a new agreement. Some time later came the day of Raffles' trial, and the protagonist arrived there without expecting the trial date to be set so early. The girl remembers that among those who observed Raffles' embezzlement case, she was the only one. Rita adds that, as she thought, her father was also present at the trial. The girl supposes he is present here in Raffles' case as a witness, but he seems relaxed even in this situation. She suggests that in the case of embezzlement against Raphael, he probably expects to get away with it. The trial begins, and the judge asks the accused priest Raphael to raise his head. Rita thinks to herself that she doesn't care what happens to her father afterwards. The judge stands up and proposes that the trial commence. Rita looks at her father and feels that he has prepared everything for his failure. The judge asks the accused if he knows what charge he was called to the dock for. The priest replies that he understands nothing and begins to make excuses, saying that he has dedicated decades to serving the goddess Lawrence. Raphael continues by saying that he swears he has never committed a crime worthy of a trial. Rita feels that there is already a commotion among the jury, but she is glad that Lord Conti took charge of the trial, since he is a less religious man. The judge tells the accused that he was summoned here on charges of embezzlement, theft, and bribery. He adds further that they have irrefutable evidence, such as a black ledger. Rita's reaction to the judge's words is shocking, given that not even Oscar could find the double entry bookkeeping. The girl realizes that she was not the only one pursuing Raphael, and the accused is surprised and does not understand what these charges are, because he simply invested the monastery's taxes in the Count's company. Rosco confirms Raphael's words and tells the judge that they have nothing wrong, and that there are many ways to manage public funds. The Count wonders if the priest is guilty of sacrificing his life for the goddess Lorenzo, and reproaches the judge for going beyond all limits. The judge is surprised and replies threateningly that it is not just about state money, but there is also evidence that the priest bribed the Count with the taxes collected by the monastery. Lord Conti reveals that Hans, the manager of the local Rose branch, has already told them everything, and the judge says that Count Rosco will not escape the charge. Count Cardinale does not understand how Hans could betray him, and replies to the judge that the man's testimony is false, and aims to set a trap for him. However, Lord Conti says that the details in the ledger match their evidence. Conti also adds that, considering all this, it is not profitable for Hans to frame Lord Rosco. Rita tells herself that if the trial continues in this direction, it will be fantastic. The judge continues by saying that due to the lack of witnesses on the part of the defendants, the trial is declared closed. But someone stops him. Evelina enters the courtroom, introduces herself, and says she will testify in favor of Priest Raphael. Rita is surprised and does not understand why the saint suddenly intervened and wonders if she is somehow involved in the embezzlement. The protagonist begins to get nervous. She understands that Evelina has a good reputation among the people, and her testimony can completely change the course of the trial. The saint declares that priest Raphael is innocent. Lord Conti asks Evelina if she has proof of his innocence. The saint replies that Raphael is a very good person. Rita is surprised by these words. The judge says this cannot be accepted as evidence, and the protagonist calms down a little. But Evelina does not calm down and says that she will use the right of pardon for her holiness. Rita does not believe her words. She is surprised that the saint has an amnesty from the church. This is because in Spezia, not only holiness, the Pope has the right to forgive any crime once every 10 years. The judge is surprised and asks Evelina if she intends to use this for the priest who committed the embezzlement. The saint says that Raphael is like a father to her, so she is willing to exercise the right of pardon in this situation. The priest is happy that they came to his aid and states that he was not talking about that. Raphael does not calm down, continues to say that he is innocent, and claims that the saint will use her right to forgive without reason, which means he is innocent. The priest continues to shout at the judge, saying that he is falsely accusing him before the court of God, and Lord Conti will definitely pay for this. Evelina adds that there is no need to wait. The saint turns to Rita and tells her that she will give her the opportunity to confess her sins to the goddess. Those sitting next to Rita are surprised, as is the heroine herself. However, the girl quickly regains her composure, thinking to herself that Evelina is too self-confident, and blaming her. The saint continues to accuse the main character, saying that she was the one who reported priest Raphael, so she demands that Rita be captured now and brought to trial. The guards are already ready, and the protagonist thinks to herself that she did not expect Evelina to act like this. Rita knows that certain procedures exist, so another trial cannot take place at this moment. The heroine realizes that she cannot stand aside if she does not want to allow such an outrageous process to continue. Suddenly, the main character's husband bursts into the courtroom, and they tell Joseph that it is forbidden to draw a weapon in the courtroom. The girl did not expect to see the Archduke, so she was sincerely surprised by his appearance. Joseph is angry. He declares that if those present want his wife to appear in court, they must take the proper steps, and only then call her. A man tells his wife that he will get her out of here. Rita remembers that she did not tell her husband the date of the trial, because she feared he would side with Evelina if he found out about this situation. Joseph says he does not want his wife to face a trial alone, and adds that he will not allow that to happen. The judge addresses the spouses and tells them that he is the chairman of the court, so they are asked to put away their weapons. Rita tells Lord Conti not to forget that the trial is not over yet, but the judge severely declares that the process concerning priest Raphael is not yet finished, and asks everyone to take a seat. Conti addresses Evelina and tells her that the priest committed a crime for which she cannot exercise the right of pardon. The judge loudly declares that priest Raphael deliberately aggravated Prince Charles's illness. Conti continues by saying that Raphael provoked heaven's wrath by locking the prince in a small room and letting him suffer from a mental illness, which greatly surprises the priest. Everyone present in the room is shocked by this statement and does not believe the judge's words. The heroine's father is surprised by this whole statement, and Rita decides that, in the end, even the emperor will hate him. The judge asks if the priest testifies that Prince Charles was disabled. Frightened and nervous, Raphael agrees with Conti's words. The judge replies that if it turns out that the prince's illness was curable, this would be an admission of his crimes, because the priest did nothing impossible to cure a member of the imperial family. Suddenly, the heroine hears that someone is about to enter the courtroom. The prince enters the room. There is an order for everyone to stand up to show respect. Prince Charles greets Sir Conti, says he is the heir to the empire's throne, and the emperor's son, and also asks to act as a witness. The judge agrees and adds that the criminal is related to the prince, so he can do whatever he wants. Prince Carlo tells Raphael that he assured him he would never walk alone. The prince, with reproach, asks the priest if he understands what this meant to him as heir to the throne. Carlo replies that for him, this meant renouncing his rights to the throne, to which Raphael replies, surprised that the illness was incurable. But the young man asks the priest if he doesn't see how the prince supports himself. And 2 months have passed since he rejected Raphael's treatment. The prince claims that the priest told him that Carlo had a leg wound as a consequence of sin. But all this time he was deceiving him, telling him it was a curse. The priest is shocked by the prince's words, and Carla adds that Raphael locked him in the bedroom to avoid sunlight. The judge is surprised by such words. He does not understand how the young man could be violated. Everyone present in the courtroom demands that priest Raphael be imprisoned, and the judge declares that, by the right granted to him by His Majesty, he declares priest Raphael guilty. The guards grab the man, but he begins to scream and ask the saint for help. However, Evelina no longer cares. She is busy with Carlo and is happy that he feels better. The girl also adds that her prayers must have reached the goddess Lorenzo, because she prayed every day for the prince to get better, and she believes there was a misunderstanding regarding priest Raphael. However, I like Evelina's words, Carl. The young man tells the girl that he once trusted her, and the years they spent together are over. And now Evelina is not the one he wants to greet. Rita realizes that the prince is walking towards her, and Joseph, and does not understand why he is doing this. The prince approaches the main character and thanks her as his daughter-in-law. The young man kisses the main character's hand and replies that everything turned out well thanks to her. Rita is surprised by these words from Carl. The heroine thinks to herself that the young man should understand what it means when he addresses her like that. But out loud, she says that he arrived at the right time. Charles replies that he is glad he could help his daughter-in-law. Rita smiles at him, but thinks to herself that the young man recently did not want to recognize her as Joseph's wife. The trial ended soon, and the heroine's father was also charged with embezzlement. Rosco is a great aristocrat and head of the Holy Council, so he cannot be imprisoned immediately, and it must be a mistake on the part of the royalists not to take advantage of this opportunity. However, Rita is worried that Carlo will ask her if she really saw the devil after being injured. The young man explained that he saw the creature the night before that day, when he was disappointed to learn that the holy water was useless. The prince told Rita that, looking at him, it was clear that it was an unusual demon. It appeared for a moment, laughed at the young man, and disappeared, frightening him greatly. Rita thinks it makes no sense to meet a demon in the monastery, and plans to ask Joseph everything again, and Carlo when they return. At that moment, the girl feels the presence of someone behind her. Rosco appears next to the heroine, angrily shouting at the girl for how she dared to hit him on the back. Rita points out that she knew he would come sooner or later, because this man has not changed, even if she returned 7 years ago. Rosco shouts at his daughter for siding with the Duke of Katen, which means siding with his enemies. The heroine asks the man to calm down and tells him that she regrets that he thinks she betrayed him. Rita says that she pretended to cure Prince Carlo, which she did for the sake of her father. And George, Rosco, does not understand what his daughter is talking about. Rita says out loud that even though Carlo is better now, he will soon be disabled again. But the girl knows that this will not happen. Count Cardinale smiles at her and says he does not believe his daughter's words, to which she asks him how she can betray her father. And George, Rita begins to say that in case her father does not believe her, she has measures. The girl declares that she is ready to give all her inheritance to her father, which greatly surprises Rosco. The man asks the girl again, and she replies that she is really ready to do this, because she is here for the good of her father and Prince George. Rita thinks to herself that what she has now is like land under her feet compared to her future wealth. Rosco calms down and says he cannot believe that his daughter finally understands her place. The man continues by saying that Rita is finally taking this seriously, so they will talk next time, and the heroine thinks that Rosco really has no shame. The man tells Rita not to forget that he kindly raised his illegitimate daughter as a daughter of the Cardinale family. Rita finds it funny that she hasn't looked like this before. The father used to insult the girl because no one recognized her as part of the Cardinale family. However, Rita sincerely thanks her father out loud, adds that she is indebted to him, and asks him not to worry too much. Sometime later, the main character arrives at a new location. She and her maid, Rona, get out, and Rita wonders if this is the town where Bruno lives. After the girl went to the market, the person she found through Genia turned out to be the one who created the Neuronia potion. A genius alchemist, Rita thought that girl would live in an estate near Katen, but be that as it may, she would be generous to alchemists and researchers. Rita believes that Bruno did not have time to sign the contract with Cardinale. Rona distracts the mistress from her thoughts and tells her that they are here. the maid shows the main character the alchemist's house. However, upon meeting Bruno's girl, Rita learns that she is not going to sign a contract with Cardinale. The heroine thinks to herself that it is funny to hear this, because in the past the girl already signed a contract with Cardinale. Rita wonders what made Bruno sign the document in her past life. The girl replies out loud to the alchemist that there was a misunderstanding, and that she has nothing to do with Cardinale, which surprises Bruno, as the heroine is the daughter of Rosco Cardinale. Rita says that she came to the girl because she wanted to propose a partnership. The main character states that she wants to start her own pharmaceutical brand and hire Bruno as a research assistant. Rita's proposal greatly surprises the alchemist, who listens intently to the heroine. Bruno asks if this means he can continue his research, and Rita replies that everything is true, but that the girl will have to transfer the results of her research to the heroine. The archduchess explains that, for her, the main thing is the final result of the product, because the final goal is the implementation and monopolization of the market. Rita adds that she will give away all the income they receive from the potion as a down payment, and this offer delights Bruno. The alchemist asks Rita about the Neuronia potion, and the protagonist thinks that it was Bruno who created it, so the price should be appropriate. Rita wonders if the alchemist is referring to the potion advertised in Madame de la Croix's brochure. It was the most popular bulletin in the capital, and seems to be a magazine with great influence. Rona asks the heroine why she is willing to do this for her. Rita replies that she understands the work and contribution that the alchemist put into this research. The girl knew that Bruno was an outstanding alchemist, and the artifacts and formulas he developed were effective. However, the current girl is different from the one the heroine met in a past life. Rita suggests that perhaps the fact is that she fell for Roscoe's bait and started working like a slave. However, currently the heroine is firmly convinced that she will not allow this to happen because she needs the alchemist. After a while, Bruno arrives with the heroine's head with a ready answer. Rita looks closely at the alchemist and realizes that Bruno has thought a lot. The girl tells the main character that she agrees with the deal. Rita smiles and tells the alchemist that he can call her by name. The girl asks Bruno if he knows anything about time regression. The alchemist replies that he has heard many rumors, but cannot say anything for sure. Soon the main character happily notices that the pharmaceutical brand has achieved the expected success. However, at the same time, Rita realizes that the fierce war with the West has not only devastated the territory. More than 1,000 knight soldiers were more injured than Carlo, but most of them could not afford even basic treatment. Neuronia not only connected the damaged nerves, but, in combination with other drugs, accelerated the healing of dead tissue. That's why it became a real miracle for injured and retired soldiers. The main character understands that the name Genevieve surprised everyone. Sometime later, Rita shows the alchemist a baby black dragon. Bruno is delighted with the creature, and Rita realizes that there is not a single alchemist in the world who would refuse to study this extraordinary beast. Young Bruno asks the main character what the dragon's name is. Rita says that the creature's name is Genevieve, and she herself understands that the time has come to slowly withdraw Cardinale from the market. First, the girl decides to understand the reason for her father's success in the South. First of all, as the heroine points out, the elite expanded their power thanks to the Cardinal's geographical advantage. At the same time, she understands that she hired Bruno and continues to wait for Cardinale's company to go bankrupt. The reason for her father's success is also the bank, which increased the size of the treasury with the help of usurious rates, as well as the presence of a mine where various minerals are extracted. At the same time, the girl thinks that her father probably could not imagine that he himself would experience the same thing that those with whom he competed experienced. Suddenly, someone approaches the protagonist and reproaches her for constantly working. Oscar approached the girl and replied so seriously that the problem is that books are coming in everywhere uninvited. Rita asks the mercenary if he shouldn't be busy. The protagonist thinks to herself that a lot of time has passed since the man arrived in Katen, and she doesn't understand why he doesn't leave, and he replies that he cannot leave because of Rita. Oscar continues explaining that he misses the main character, however, when he decided to leave the girl and cross the threshold of the door, that is, he was tortured by a burning pain. The mercenary approaches Rita and tells her that he could never leave. And the heroine thinks that there was a time when he was obsessed with her, even before her return. But the girl understands that whether it's jewelry or rare things, beauty has the same value to him. However, if you think about the man's behavior now, the heroine understands that you might think he likes her. However, she dismisses these thoughts, realizing that this is impossible. And she laughs, and the man wonders what made her laugh. She dismisses it and says she imagined something ridiculous, but Oscar does not stop and continues to interrogate her. Unexpectedly, the heroine says out loud that Oscar probably likes her. To this, the man seriously asks the girl why she thinks this is ridiculous. Oscar stands next to the girl and replies that she is not mistaken. Rita thinks it's a joke and asks him about it, to which he seriously replies that she would have run away if it wasn't a joke. The man falls silent, and the girl thinks that everything has changed due to her return to the past. And she wonders if her good relationship with the mercenary has truly been ruined. However, Oscar does not pursue this topic and tells Rita that this is a joke, so he asks for the bill back. Rita understands that he is thinking about destroying the imperial prohibition. The girl sees the man's confidence and guesses that he has already discovered all her plans. And Oscar says out loud that he will return soon. The man adds that he is now just a dog whom the heroine listens to which the girl falls silent. The mercenary adds that he will not go to hell, so he asks the heroine not to run away. Soon the heroine thinks that before Oscar finishes his work, she too will be gradually implementing her plan. Her father, taking advantage of the fact that the Imperial Bank is the largest in the country, gathered capital, after issuing a large number of bills to investors. But Rita knows that the freighter, loaded with goods acquired with the accumulated funds, will soon be destroyed. The main character is on the shore, understands that it will destroy the ship, and holds in her hands a jewel donated by the mermaid, and hopes she hasn't lied, and the heroine will be able to call the Sea King. Many say that the king responded to the call of the gem's owner and granted him his wish, so the girl hesitates whether she should call him by his name. Rita holds the jewel in her hands and says the name Kiera interrogatively. Suddenly something starts to happen, the stone begins to shine, and the girl is surprised. The gem starts to change a little. The heroine hears a voice, saying it has been a long time since it smelled the sea. Rita looks at what is happening with surprise and fascination, realizing that the mermaid did not deceive her. And Kiera is the god of the sea and of all mermaids. Finally, the Sea King is released and appears before the heroine. Rita is surprised by what she sees. She looks at the creature suspiciously, but feels a little embarrassed and replies irritably that the heroine is several years older. Kiera continues scolding the girl, telling her not to neglect her sacred home. But Rita wonders if she means the stone under the house. The main character thanks the creature and adds that the mermaid who gave her the emerald promised that the sea god would help her. Kiera feels embarrassed and unhappy, but says that a deal is a deal and asks why Rita called her. The creature warns the main character by telling her that she will only grant her one wish. Rita suspects something, not understanding why Kiera does not finish speaking. Internally, the girl decides that it is better to find everything out, so she tells the goddess that she felt a strong aura coming from the gem. The main character's words please the creature, and she begins to boast, saying that this stone has become her home and is made of hundreds of mermaid tears. Rita plays with Kiera, saying that she must be the most capable of the gods, and the creature confirms it. Feeling that she has spoken enough with Kiera, Rita asks how many times the goddess can interfere in human affairs, which the creature begins to boast about, replying that she can do it more than twice every 500 years. Immediately, Kiera realizes what she let slip, and Rita is happy to have been able to trap God. The main character plays along and says that it is a great honor for her to hear the wishes she wants to make come true. Remembering that there is only one wish, the girl says she will think about it carefully. Sometime later, someone arrives at Joseph's office. Oscar stands in front of the Archduke's desk, and the Archduke asks him what he means. The mercenary does not mince words and asks the man when he will divorce Rita. Joseph wonders if Rita said she was getting a divorce from him. However, he replies out loud to Oscar that he is not obliged to answer that question. The mercenary smiles and says that he does not have the habit of courting other people's women. Joseph smiles and asks Oscar if he hasn't tried this before, to which he denies it. The mercenary immediately says that he warned the Archduke and asks him to think about it before his next arrival. Oscar adds that he believes Joseph, as a husband, should know it. In the end, The Archduke replies that they are not obliged to answer the mercenary's question anyway. Oscar realizes that the protagonist's husband is only trying to appear indifferent. As always, Joseph seems calm, but now he is angry with the mercenary. Sometime later, the protagonist looks for her husband, expecting him to be at the training ground. Suddenly, the heroine wonders if something happened to her husband. The girl remembers how Dante warned her that a little while ago Oscar came to see her husband, and wonders why the mercenary needed this. At that moment, the girl enters the training ground and sees that her husband's training is over. The heroine looks at her husband and wonders if he has ever used magic. Joseph notices Rita, and at that moment the girl pays attention to his eyes, and she doesn't understand why they are called ghostly, because it's simply a beautiful color. The man pulls Rita out of her thoughts by asking her what she is doing at the training ground. The girl explains that she did not find her husband in his office, so the butler told her that he was busy training. The girl continues by saying that nothing serious happened, but that she has something to say. The man listens to her attentively, and Rita adds that she has a request. The girl started to speak, but the husband immediately replied negatively, which surprised the girl. Because Rita hadn't said anything yet, Joseph says sternly that he will not allow this to happen. In a stern tone, the man adds that he will never allow spouses to divorce. Rita looks at the Archduke surprised, not understanding what this sudden conversation about divorce is about. And the man continues by saying that he does not want to sign any contract. The man wants to add something, but cannot find the words and seems depressed. Rita realizes this, looks at her husband surprised, not understanding why he is behaving this way. The girl replies that she understands Joseph does not want to sign the contract, but asks if she can do him a favor. The man falls silent, and the heroine places an emerald in his hand, explaining that it is an artifact of the sea god, received in exchange for helping the mermaid. Joseph looks at the jewel with surprise, and the girl explains that she wants to use this power to create a port in Katana where she can trade with Odebelli. Rita adds that entering and leaving the port is still dangerous, so she asks her husband to take care of the monsters, to which he agrees and promises to organize a subjugation team. Suddenly, Joseph asks if he can ask the heroine for a favor. The heroine allows it, to which the man asks her to lend him Oscar a spina, which surprises Rita. Some time later, Joseph sits in his office and reflects on the documents. He thinks to himself that he did not expect to be so impulsive, and at that moment, the young Manuel approaches him. The man remembers a previous conversation with his wife, and remembers that Rita was very surprised when he told her he would send Oscar to Dawn. Dawn is a distant country that is not easy to reach. To get there, it is necessary to cross the desert. Manuel approaches the Archduke and asks him what he is doing. After reading the documents lying on Joseph's desk, the butler is inspired and admires the mercenary mentioned in the documents. That mercenary helped Joseph during the war in the West, so the butler admires him and asks the Archduke about it. Suddenly, Manuel asks Joseph if the Archduke really wants to send Oscar to Dawn, and Joseph, sadly, realizes that Dante told Manuel about his meeting with Oscar. The young butler says that he understands Joseph's actions, because when Manuel was in love with Bonnie, he did everything to separate her from Daniel. The young man adds that he understands the Archduke's feelings. However, Joseph interrupts Manuel and tells him that he is not doing this out of personal feelings. The Archduke explains that he needs time to understand if Oscar deserves to be with Rita, to which Manuel objects, saying that the heroine is not a child. The butler tells Joseph that Rita is very popular in Katen and asks what will happen if the girl speaks well of Oscar. Manuel adds that the Archduke has no choice but to respect Madame's wishes. Joseph thinks about it and remembers that Rita married in the first place to escape the Cardinal family. A man becomes tense and nervous contemplating his marriage. Joseph realizes that he cannot be so greedy with his wife. However, despite this, the man feels everything twisting inside him. Sometime later, the main character learns that Prince George has come to see her. The servants say that the prince wants to meet the heroine, and Rita realizes that he is finally here. The girl orders the butler to tell George to wait for her a little, as she still has work to do. The money invested by Cardinal was returned, and all the expensive things on the ship sank, so the bankruptcy of the Reichsbank is only a matter of time. Rita asks butler Dante if he can buy the products that Cardinal produces under the name Anat, the man's wife. The girl adds that if he helps her, she will definitely reward the butler. Rita understands that she is asking a lot, but she does not want anyone to know that Katen covets Cardinale's property. So the girl needs a man whose name is unknown to outsiders. Dante asks what they will do if they simply run away with all their property, which greatly surprises the girl. Rita smiles and says she doesn't think she needs to worry about that. The girl knows that Dante and Anna protected the Archduke until the fall of Katen, so they can definitely be trusted. Out loud, Rita tells the butler that she believes him, which surprises the butler. The man tells the girl that he doesn't even know how to return her trust. The heroine asks the butler to first take her to the guest who came to see her. Upon reaching the correct room, the girl meets a nervous George. And frightened, Rita calmly greets the prince. The man falls off the sofa, and the heroine asks him if he is all right. George shouts at Rita and asks what kind of medicine she gave him that the side effects are so severe. The man adds that now it is difficult for him to even go outside, to which the heroine calmly replies that she warned him about the side effects. Rita adds that it seems the prince is taking too much potion. George starts making excuses, saying that he had little time and did not know that Carlo's legs would heal. The prince says that he heard that Rita helped Carlo with his treatment, and the girl confirms it, answering that most likely the prince did not hear this from his father. The heroine adds that the effect is temporary and that soon his legs will stop working again. And George gets angry and says that this is the first time Rita has acted without consulting him. The prince continues with apprehension, saying that he is worried that next time the girl will come to Carlo's aid. And not him. George asks the heroine not to do this and reminds Rita that he promised to make her empress. However, the main character calmly asks if George did not promise the same to Sabrina. The man does not understand what Rita is talking about, and at that moment, the maid in question enters the room. George does not notice this and tells Rita irritably if she really thought he would marry a maid. And he swears to the heroine that she is the only one for him. Rita calmly asks if George was in love with Sabrina. The man replies nervously that he never loved this useless woman who is ready to give herself to anyone. And Sabrina, entering, drops the tray in shock. George hears a crash and does not understand what happened. Turning towards the sound, he sees an angry maid. Sabrina asks what the prince just said and if she heard everything correctly. The maid breaks down and screams at George. How can he say such things to her? Because she was desperately waiting for him, and it was thanks to him that she stayed to serve the Katen family all this time. But George does not listen to the maid, turns to Rita and tells her that all her words are true. The man approaches Rita and tells her that he loves her and not the heroine's maid. Sabrina gets angry and thinks that the prince doesn't even care about her. Annoyed, the maid turns around and walks away from George and Rita. The protagonist realizes that Sabrina is gone. The heroine keeps thinking about Sabrina, happy that she didn't specifically tell the maid to attend to her. And now she knows her place. Prince George distracts the girl from her thoughts and asks her not to leave him. Rita thinks that seeing the way he behaves with Sabrina, she should have realized that Cardinale was in danger. The heroine realizes that if the economic resources of the cardinals run out, she will also have problems, and she thinks that the family has clung to her since she started making a fortune in the alchemy business. The girl whispers in the prince's ear how what he throws away can be his, and the prince sincerely does not understand what she is talking about. Rita explains how she can get rid of the prince who is never hers. The heroine tells the man that she will not betray him, but realizes that this is only for the moment. The girl tells George that she came to ask him, but she is a ship that has already sailed. Rita gets up and leaves the surprised prince. Some time later, the protagonist searches for the ingredients for the necessary medicine, which consists of miserasol for skin growth, pneumagold for bone growth, and Nuranov to repair damaged nerves. Rita looks with satisfaction at the 3 vials of the medicine components. The heroine points out that Carlo's recovery had its advertising effect, but she never expected the prince to ask her to train with the captain of the royal guard as soon as he returned to the imperial palace. Rita also understands that it is important to maintain the income that is now available, so it will not be necessary to sell all the magic stones in Odobel. The girl can be sure that not even her son will have to worry about money for the rest of his life. Rita thinks that the festival in honor of the goddess Laurentia is just around the corner. This is a holiday that was brilliantly illuminated by moonlight, and the day the main character had a child. Now Rita has no reason to get drunk like then, although the girl and her husband did not despise each other. They remained a couple only formally. At that moment, her husband knocks on Rita's room door and asks permission to enter. Rita lets Joseph in, but thinks he wants to tell her what happened in the Black Forest. A man enters the room and sees vials with medicine ingredients. Joseph tells his wife that it's good that her business is growing. The man tells the girl that Katen's knights reported that they managed to suppress the demons in the Black Forest. And Rita rejoices, saying that now Adbelia can be traded without going through the top of Zenith. The heroine thinks there are still problems that require the Emperor's permission. Unexpectedly, Joseph informs his wife that the Emperor wants to meet her. Rita knows that the current Emperor Witch's II has not shown his paternal side to anyone. Joseph was not only born with a contaminated aura, but was also deprived of his throne and sent to the battlefield as if asking for death. George's mother, Empress Ursula, was looked down upon due to her low birth, so Rita finds this invitation somewhat awkward. The heroine thinks that the Emperor wants to punish her because, being a simple aristocrat, she got involved in the sacred struggle for the throne. Suddenly, Joseph says that he knows his wife hates the Emperor and that he greatly regrets having approached the girl with such a request. Rita is surprised how her husband knows she dislikes the Emperor because she doesn't remember telling him. However, the heroine realizes that this could be a good opportunity for her. Rita asks her husband if she can state her request, and the man agrees. Hearing this answer, the heroine immediately went to the imperial palace, more worried than she thought. Rita starts going to meet the Emperor and telling herself that she shouldn't worry. Approaching, the girl is announced to the ruler, and she greets the Emperor. Witches orders the heroine to raise her head. The girl obeys and now looks at the man. The girl draws attention to the eternally noble throne on which the Emperor sits, pride of the empire and symbol of Spezia. This is an artifact containing the sacred power of the first emperor, who was a holy knight. Rita realizes that this is the first time she has seen this artifact so closely. The Emperor asks the heroine if she knows why he called her, and she replies that she does not. Witches says he found out that Rita helped Prince Carlo when he was injured, and he asks her why she did it. The girl replies that, although she is weak, she really wanted to help Prince Carlo. The man approaches Rita and asks her why he did this because Carlo is her husband's younger brother. And Rita confirms it. The heroine pays attention to the Emperor's aura. She compares the man to the previous ruler and realizes that she feels no pressure from witches. However, the girl is confused and stressed by the Emperor's murky gaze. Witches tells the girl that he wants to give her the Angelo's medal, not only because she helped Carlo. The Emperor continues by saying that Rita also played a decisive role in creating ways to treat returning soldiers. The Saint Angel Medal is mainly awarded to generals who have achieved great accomplishments, or scientists who have made great discoveries, so the medal has great significance for the title. For Rita, it was a great honor. The Emperor awarded her a prize and granted her the title. And property. The man adds that even though the heroine is the Grand Duchess of Katen, this is not the same as having a title and an independent territory. The Emperor continues by saying that he wants to throw a ball to celebrate her achievements, so he invites her, to which Rita replies that she is very grateful to the man. To herself, the heroine is still surprised to have received a medal, a title, and property. She adores the ruler, but privately wonders what the Emperor could be up to. The imperial ball was ready the next day, before Rita had time to return to Katen. And although the heroine hurriedly sent a message to Katen, her husband could not participate in the ball due to the rush. However, the heroine's mood at the event is not very good. She still thinks about the suspicion of what is happening. Suddenly, a blonde young woman turns to the girl and asks, "Where is the Countess rushing off to?" Rita remembers that at the official ceremony, the Emperor called her Countess Seraphine. Rita tells the blonde that she wanted to step out for a moment to breathe on the balcony. The blonde replies that the ruler should soon present an order to the heroine, so that she should not leave. Rita suspects the blonde Gratiana Valenti, because lately she has been constantly hovering around the heroine. So now Rita wonders if the blonde is leading her into a trap. Gratiana was the famous daughter of Marquis Valenti, a high-ranking nobleman. Rita remembers that even when she was cardinal, Valenti did not like the heroine. The girl invites Valenti to step out onto the balcony together. The blonde is surprised that Rita remembers her. The main character confirms it, and the lady becomes embarrassed but accepts Rita's proposal. The girls go out onto the balcony, and Valenti asks what Rita wanted to ask her. Suddenly, Gratiana feels that something is wrong, so she turns to the heroine. Valenti is nervous and asks the girl why Rita closed the door and tells her that she wants to go to the ballroom. At that moment, the blonde sees a vial in the main character's hand and, horrified, she assumes it is poison. Rita approaches Graziana and asks her not to worry, as she is not the type of person who goes to the extreme of poisoning herself. The main character explains that she has a new perfume developed by Rita in her hand. Rita hands the vial to Valenti and asks her to evaluate the perfume, because the lady knows about fashion, and the girl realizes that it is actually a truth serum. Graziana takes the bottle and listens to her, saying the scent is very good, and Rita tells the girl to inhale slowly and enjoy the aroma. The protagonist is glad to have managed to make the serum at dawn, and to have been lucky that there were summer flowers in the bedroom. Rita thinks to herself that it doesn't matter what trap the emperor has prepared. She cannot stand idly by. Some time later, when the serum has taken effect, Rita asks if it is true that she will be tried for blasphemy against the imperial family. Graziana confirms it, saying that some people are having side effects from the potion created by Rita, and that an appeal has been filed with the emperor. The appeal demands a fair trial and severe punishment for the protagonist. Rita hears this and does not understand why Valenti is so attached to her, and the blonde says she only wants to call Rita by her name. Graziana continues. She says that the protagonist's name is beautiful, like her eyes. Rita thinks that the blonde probably wasn't looking at her because she was on guard, and Valenti asks the heroine to call her Ratzi. Rita agrees and asks what the reason was that the emperor gave her the title. And the medal was because he wants to present her to the court as Countess Seraphine instead of archduchess. Graziana confirms it. Since the archduke has extraterritorial rights, the emperor deliberately granted her territory and title. Rita understands that the ball is just bait to trap her, so she realizes she can no longer stay here. Out loud, the main character says she first needs to leave the castle, and Valenti replies that she will help the girl. Rita is surprised, and the blonde continues, saying that since she heard her father was looking for a way to get Rita into trouble, she prepared herself. The girl says that, just in case, she has prepared something for her meeting with Rita. Valenti says that, when it comes to romance on the balcony, it is for escaping. Graziana pulls out a rope and hands it to the heroine, telling her that if she goes down on it, she will find herself in a royal garden. After a while, Rita ran to the garden and thinks to herself that the path suggested by Valenti turned out to be the right one, and she did not think she could reach the forest in such a short time. Rita understands that most likely the knights will come looking for her at the ball, and mentally thanks Graziana for saving her. And the knight at the head of the detachment was Robert Dorchet, who took Ivonne in the past. The heroine feels that as soon as she sees the knight's face, she begins to tremble with anger. However, Rita quickly recovers, because now you cannot show weakness. The girl understands that both in the past and now, the only person who can protect her is herself. Suddenly, Rita is called by her husband Joseph. The girl admits to herself that she is not used to receiving help from others because they usually used her and despised her. However, deep down, Rita was hoping for someone's help. Joseph approaches his wife and hugs her, telling her that everything is fine now. Rita clings to her husband, feeling that she has become accustomed to Joseph's friendly voice, and now she feels relieved to see him. The archduke says he was very scared, and Rita asks him how her husband ended up here, to which he replies that he rushed here as soon as he received a message from the girl. Rita is surprised by this answer, and Joseph says he could not leave his wife alone in such a difficult situation. The man adds that he was able to arrive faster, thanks to the monster that Rita tamed. Vivi, the main character's pet, greets its owner. The girl is surprised that her husband did not come on horseback, because the creature did not want to expose its back to anyone. Rita says it's good that Joseph took Vivi, because they need to leave quickly, since the knights are looking for her. The man apologizes to his wife for putting her through so much trouble because of him, but she reassures her husband by telling him that disobeying the emperor's orders is treason, so he doesn't need to apologize to her. Suddenly, Rita senses a strange smell. The girl understands that it is the truth serum, and the man reminds her that he wanted to ask her something. Rita feels the serum starting to take effect, so she mentally forbids herself from thinking about anything. However, the potion has already taken effect, and nothing helps the girl to stop. She says out loud that she wants to hug her husband. The man is surprised by her words and a little embarrassed. Rita realizes what she just said, so she covers her face in embarrassment. The The couple stands opposite each other, completely embarrassed. The girl remembers that she wanted to meet her son again, so she wanted to spend just one night with her husband. Rita is still embarrassed and tries to put her feelings in order. Joseph stands in front and silently looks at the girl. In the end, Rita realizes that not everything is as simple as she would like. She tells herself that under no circumstances should she treat Joseph like this. She reminds herself that no matter how selfish she may be, they sincerely wish happiness to her husband. Therefore, the girl understands that if she desires Joseph again, she will destroy everything again. She tells her husband out loud that she is most likely sick, and he replies that her cheeks are red. The man touches her face, and the girl replies that she is most likely delirious due to an illness. But the husband supposes that his wife has a fever and needs to return quickly. Rita realizes that she wants this hand to touch only her, but dismisses everything as her greed. Some time later, Joseph is in the forest with Vivi and remembers that his wife should recover in a day. He supposes that to escape the ball, the girl used something similar to the truth serum. The man realizes that the potion affected the girl, but when she pressed against his hand, he immediately wanted to shower her with kisses. In the end, the man decides to stop thinking. He understands that he cannot stay with his wife, although he too will definitely leave the country someday. The man realizes that he once made a promise to the girl. Joseph realizes that he still hasn't thought about abandoning Spezia. He rejected it because this is his homeland, which he decided to preserve by renouncing the throne. After Rita's recovery, she explains to her husband that the emperor most likely decided to bring her to trial for deception. The man objects, saying there were no reports of side effects during the drug development, and Rita looks at her husband, thinking he is pretending that nothing happened yesterday. Out loud, the girl says this is true, but the verdict will be pronounced by the emperor, and she will clearly be at a disadvantage. Joseph says that Katen has extraterritoriality, so Rita cannot be tried arbitrarily. But Rita explains that this is why the emperor granted her a medal. She explains that this was done so that the trial would be against the countess and not against the archduchess. The girl adds that in any case, she needs a lawyer to help her and asks her husband for recommendations. But he says that he himself will protect his wife, which surprises Rita. The man explains that as crown prince, he necessarily has to study the laws of the empire and, although he has never appeared in court on behalf of the emperor, he has not yet lost his royal status. The girl is ashamed and says that then everyone will know that the archduke is actually a prince by post. Rita remembers that when Joseph appeared alive and established himself as archduke, it was obvious that a big scandal awaited him. In addition, the heroine realizes that the church can now aim its arrows at Carlo, and she tells her husband that he cannot ask him to go through such difficulties. Rita falls silent, thinking about everything that is happening. Joseph says everything is fine and smiles at his wife. The man adds that for Rita's sake, he will gladly endure any pain. A few days later, Joseph provided the heroine with a list of those who reported side effects and recommended that she come herself. Among the names on the list, the heroine's attention focused on a familiar one, and she became thoughtful. The girl approaches the sick woman and asks why Madame forgot in such a miserable place. Rita explains that they informed her that Norma was suffering side effects from the medicine, and the girl confirms it. The main character remembers that Norma worked as a saleswoman in a shop located in Nizang. The heroine remembers that the girl was able to heal her hand with the help of medicines, and personally thanked the archduchess. That's why Rita thought the girl was faking money, so she went herself. However, in what condition Norma is, Rita realizes that she is truly sick. Rita asks the patient how she feels, and she replies that her whole body hurts. She thinks about Norma's words. The girl asks the doctor for the exact name of the disease, and he replies that it is Noer's disease. The man explains that it is a serious illness that causes intense pain, and severe that she feels like her whole body is on fire. Rita knows that alchemical potions obey the laws of nature. Therefore, side effects can only exist within the error limits of their calculated formula. The healing properties of the medicine are intended only for damaged nerves. However, Rita feels that something is wrong and the patient Norma is lying. Rita says that the illness is so severe that not even holy water can cure it, and that it is really very painful. Norma is surprised and does not understand what the heroine means. The girl starts making excuses, saying that she was promised that a bottle of holy water could cure her. Rita asks who said that, and the doctor attending the patient pretends it wasn't him. The main character realizes that someone has indicated a false method for treating the illness. The girl thinks, realizing that holy water is so expensive that commoners cannot afford it. And it seems that someone told the patient not to worry about the treatment. That's why she believed in the power of holy water. At this moment, Evelina appears to Prince George. The man greets the girl and tells her that she is as beautiful as always. The saint falls silent and smiles friendly at the prince. George says he heard there will be a trial against Rita Cardinale, which means everything is going according to his plan. And the saint confirms it. Evelina says that the prince wanted to give the girl a chance for revenge, so she will react immediately. And the man adds that Rita has many enemies. George also says that Rita is a beautiful woman, but unfortunately very stubborn. And he believes that she could be happy in a political marriage. The man realizes that Rita has good skills, so if she had been obedient, he would have loved her, so he regrets sending her to Katen. Looking at the saint, he realizes that she belongs to Joseph and feels angry. Evelina claims that Joseph does not know much and has been deceived by Rita, but she blames the saint for everything. And George tries to calm her down. The man says that the archduke will understand how important and beautiful Evelina is. George promises that when he gets the throne, everything will return to normal, and no one will interfere with his plans. At this moment, Rita talks to her husband about the medicine she created and explains its side effects. Joseph supposes that patients with Noir's disease, and Rita confirms it. She says there is a connection between neuronia and the disease. It is easy to deceive people who do not understand anything about medicine. The girl admits that even she, who made the medicine, was worried that it would have side effects. So she asks her husband how he managed to convince himself that people were lying. Joseph was not satisfied with identifying the witnesses the emperor would present in court, so he convinced the heroine that she needed to meet the witnesses in person. Dante was so excited that he stayed up all night looking for cases related to the trial. Rita understands that no one would do this if they weren't sure that people were giving false information. Joseph says he believes his wife and knows how carefully the medicine was prepared. The man says he believes that his wife's medicine could not have that side effect. And suddenly, he takes the heroine in his arms. Rita is confused, and the archduke continues saying that they have witnesses and evidence, so it's better to stop worrying. The girl tells her husband that she can walk by herself, but Joseph replies that he took Rita in his arms because he thinks she won't be able to walk. The man says he is sure that Rita will not sleep all night if he doesn't do this, and the girl starts to feel embarrassed. Rita presses against her husband's shoulder, feeling how strongly his heart beats. After a while, the heroine cannot believe that Joseph dragged her to bed. Confused, the girl turns to her husband. Rita thanks the archduke for believing in her, and he replies, who else should he trust, if not the girl? Joseph adds that since Rita is his wife, it is natural for him to trust her. Rita feels ashamed because not even her father and George trusted her much. The girl looks at her husband and realizes that he is the man she longs for. Suddenly, Rita's inner voice tells her not to be blinded by her desire. Rita realizes that she was already a criminal who led her husband to death in the past. The heroine is tormented by a variety of thoughts, but still understands that she likes Joseph. She wonders what she should do next, and suggests that maybe she should stop turning a blind eye to the obvious. The girl points out that Lawrence probably knew how greedy she was, and tells Joseph that he is very kind. The man notices that this is the first time he has heard something like this, because normally everyone says he is rude. Rita begins to talk about how one day she will leave Katen. The girl wishes her husband happiness when he is not with her. The man gets out of bed and says that his wife constantly talks as if she wants him to be with another woman, and asks her if he is such a bad husband. But the girl stops him, saying that she doesn't say it because she doesn't like him, but because she really thinks about him. Joseph addresses his wife and tells her not to ask her husband to go out with another woman. Rita looks at the man incomprehensibly because she thought it would be better for him. But now she doesn't understand why he has such an offended look. Rita decides to ask her husband a question. The girl asks what Joseph would do if his beloved were poor and mean. The man carefully takes the girl's hand and tells her that it doesn't matter. Joseph kisses his wife's hand and adds that he himself would love the man. The husband leans towards Rita and tells her that when the trial is over, he wants to tell her something. The girl meets his gaze sadly, because at first she wanted to say that she liked him. But she stopped. She didn't want to ruin his life, although it would be better if she told him how she felt. Sometime later, men dressed in white appeared to Joseph. They tell the Archduke that his wife died in the holy prison, which surprises the man. Currently, the heroine regrets not having told him anything beforehand. 2 days had passed since Rita spent the night with Joseph, and the trial date was approaching. The right day has arrived, and Rita understands that she will appear before the court again. The girl calms down and points out that there is no need to be nervous. She trusts that the trial will proceed as expected. People in the hallway gossip and discuss what is happening. What surprises everyone the most is that Joseph, the demon hunter, was allowed to enter the courtroom, because it is unknown what could happen if a strange energy ruins the palace. Rita is surprised that those present in the room openly despise them. She puts her hand on her husband's to calm him and thinks that she cannot even imagine what it would be like to be in the imperial family. The girl asks if Joseph is all right, and he replies that everything is fine and there is nothing to worry about. Rita points out that even in such moments, her husband worries more about her than about himself. Finally, they announce that the emperor will soon come out, and everyone must bow to him. The ruler enters the courtroom, and everyone present greets the emperor. The ruler appears in full regalia in front of everyone. Finally, Rita is announced, and the emperor greets her, and she replies. Unexpectedly, the ruler focuses on the Archduke and tells him he has no right to be here. Joseph does not listen to the emperor and says that he will attend the trial, with the right of Prince Joseph Angelos. The man tells the emperor that he cannot deny that he belongs to the Angelos family, and His Majesty knows that Joseph has the right to participate in the royal court. Everyone present in the room is surprised to learn that the Duke of Katen is a prince. The emperor gets angry when he realizes the secret has come out. Rita decides to take the floor, addresses the emperor. The girl tells him that Joseph, being the Duke of Katen, the emperor's opponent, and her husband will represent her in the trial. The ruler gets angry and says that he really wants both of them to be condemned to shame. At that moment, the door of the room opens and someone enters. Rita sees a familiar face and wonders why the girl who came hates her so much. Sabrina has arrived at the courtroom, and Rita has many questions about the maid swirling in her head.